every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver, and it is... And there we go, jubilation, a victory for women everywhere as the Supreme Court rules that a woman in UK law does mean biological sex.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Some women across the country are celebrating the judgment.
Absolutely delighted. So 4 women in Scotland have won their court case today at the Supreme Court to find a final definition on what is a woman.
That sex is real and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
Well, I've been here at the Supreme Court to hear that judgment, speaking to campaigners this morning for what they say is a landmark judgment for women and girls across the UK.
OK, and elsewhere, is Britain losing control of its borders? Well, it looks like it. GB News provisional figures show around 700 migrants arrived in UK waters yesterday. That's surpassing the previous one-day record of 656 migrants arriving on Saturday. How many more hotels do we now need?
And breaking news, Tommy Robinson loses his appeal against an 18-month prison sentence for contempt of court.
And have you seen this? Yes, the British tennis player Harriet Dart, well, she's apologised after being caught on camera telling an umpire her opponent smells really bad and should wear deodorant. But is it ever OK to tell someone they smell? And if it is, how should you do it?
And restaurant chain Toby Carvery has come under fire after chopping down a significant 400-year-old oak tree that's considered more ecologically significant than the Sycamore Gap tree.
Ooh. Oh, what a happy day it is today, Tom. What a happy day. Victory for women. Not just some women. Some women. You had to add in the some women there, didn't you? Yes, women up and down the country will be very pleased to see a return to common sense here.
What do you mean a return? I mean, it's the law.
Well,
It was the law yesterday, it's the law today.
Clearly you haven't read this. The Scottish government wanted people with just a GRC, a gender recognition certificate, to be able to have sex-based protections. This says nope.
I mean, that's the law in England.
This was a court case that was taken up against the Scottish government because, remember, things like crazy things like transgender prisoners who had been accused of rape, convicted of rape, being held in women's prisons. Things like that. Things like sports. Things like refuges. Things like quotas on boards that the government wanted to include transgender women in. Those sort of things.
You're pointing to examples across there where we already have distinction within UK law. That's what the Supreme Court was explaining today, that the Equality Act allows for distinction.
The Scottish government wanted anyone with a gender recognition certificate to have sex-based protections in law. This disputes that and rules against that. So this is a win for women. This is a win for women who believe in this. The only people who think that this isn't a win are the Green Party, by the looks of things. And Tom, why can't you just be happy for women, you know? Would it hurt you so much to just say, yeah, this is a good day for women who care about sex-based rights, yeah? Look, I'll take this one on the chin, it's good.
I think there are lots of women who feel very, very passionately about this.
And you think they're wrong.
And they're very happy today. There are also lots of women who don't feel as passionately about it.
Of course, like some people feel passionate about all sorts of things.
Yeah, and looking at polling, most women are more likely than men to feel dispassionately about
well, we've
this.
spoken about this before, and I think that's the same as the... Well, you have to show me the poll, firstly.
Yeah.
You have to show me that, because I've never actually seen this poll.
But there are lots of
I think it's like the net zero poll. You ask people, are you supportive of net zero? Most people say yes, until you drill in the detail, where you say, well, are you willing to give your car up? Are you willing to pay this much more in tax, you know, etc.? Are you willing to have your heat pump instead of your gas boiler? And then it starts to change, doesn't it? I think that would be the same with a poll on this type of thing. I think that, and I also feel like you're behind the times. The mood has changed. The debate has been won. Trans women are not women, OK? You treat people with dignity and respect, but you don't get sex-based protections.
I think there are going to be a lot of disappointed activists, perhaps, when they realise that this ruling doesn't change the situation in England at all. I mean, there will tomorrow there will still be sporting teams who say we're going to divide by gender rather than sex.
Yeah, I get that, but it gives people so much more confidence to go into that boardroom, to go into that sports club, to go into that sports gym where, you know, men are allowed in the women's changing rooms or whatever, trans women are, and say, you know what, the Supreme Court here has ruled that trans women are not women. I feel emboldened to make my view known.
So you
can't sack me because of X, Y, Z.
Do you think the result of this ruling will be people marching round, hurling people out of loos and changing rooms if they happen to be trans?
No, I don't, but I think it will give people confidence to be able to stand up for what is a biological fact, and I think that's very important if we're going to live in a real world. But let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. We're going to be discussing lots more as well, if you're sick of this whole trans debate. But let's get the headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. The top story, of course, just after midday. The Supreme Court has ruled that women and sex in the Equality Act do refer to biological women and biological sex.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Means that a gender recognition certificate does not change a transgender person's legal sex under the Act. Campaigners say the ruling protects single-sex spaces like hospital wards and refuges. The court found the Scottish Government had acted beyond its powers by redefining women in the equality legislation. Ministers, though, insist transgender people are still protected under separate provisions in the law. Well, after that judgment, one woman said it was almost unbelievable and finally reflects what they've always argued.
Sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
In other news this afternoon, Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating claims about a Syrian refugee he had previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed arguments that segregation in prison was making him ill. Robinson was also previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. It's now his second legal defeat in just a month after a separate challenge over his prison conditions was thrown out. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%. That is lower than expected, driven mostly by falling petrol prices. It's now the second month in a row that the price rises have slowed. But relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again from July. The Bank of England says it expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target until at least the end of 2027. Manchester Arena bomb plotter Hasham Abedi has been moved to Britain's most secure prison cell after a violent attack on 3 guards at HMP Frankland. The officers were doused in cooking oil and stabbed with a homemade weapon in the high-security jail's separation unit. Abedi's now back in Belmarsh, held in the UK's only available suite cell, a fortified unit watched round the clock by 5 staff and a prison dog. He's serving at least 55 years behind bars for helping his brother kill 22 people in 2017. The government has now ordered a review as prison unions are demanding stab vests, tasers and a ban on self-cooking in jails. Serious pollution incidents by England's water companies have hit a 10-year high, with campaigners warning the system is failing. New data reveals nearly 2,500 spills last year alone. That is more than double the target, risking harm to wildlife and public health. The campaign group Surfers Against Sewage say rivers and coastlines are being blighted by repeated failures. However, water firms say they plan to invest £12 billion to cut spills, but most of that will come from rising bills. Well, your Easter getaway, it just got a little bit smoother. Over 1,000 miles of roadworks are being lifted across England from Thursday morning. National Highway says 97.5% of major routes will be cone-free to help millions hit the road after fewer delays. More than 19 million drivers are expected on Good Friday alone, with busy travel continuing right through Easter Monday. But the RAC's warning of a hat-trick of hold-ups as families rush to make the most of the long weekend. And drivers are being urged to plan ahead, check their tyres and fuel up before setting off. That's the latest from me for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour's time. Now, though, let's get plenty more with Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past midday. Now, the Supreme Court has unanimously ruled that the use of the terms women and sex in UK law under the Equality Act 2010 refers to biological sex.
Yes, now this follows a long-running legal battle between the Scottish Government and the campaign group for Women Scotland.
Let's go to our reporter Adam Cherry, who's there outside the Supreme Court, where just some time ago the ruling was heard. Adam.
That's right, guys. Yeah, I was standing out here just after the ruling was delivered, and all the campaigners from For Women Scotland, Sex Matters, several other groups came out here, were celebrating. For them, it was a hugely significant moment to have this confirm that in-law biological sex within the Equality Act. Sex means biological sex. They are one and the same, as the Equality Act determines. I spoke to Maya Forstater. She is the CEO of Sex Matters, and she said it was hugely important for women and girls, and that was echoed with several of the other guests I spoke to. I have to say there was one or two trans rights campaigners who were here as well, who were frustrated by this and said that trans rights are human rights. Nothing too contentious or no sort of battle between them, but it's certainly true that there are some people who are disappointed, as you said, Tom, but overwhelmingly here the feeling outside of the court was one of celebration.
I've just got to say that the First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, has released a statement. Now, of course, it was his ministry that was fighting in favour, or rather against what the ruling turned out to be. And the statement from John Swinney, First Minister of Scotland, is that the Scottish Government accepts today's Supreme Court judgment. The ruling gives clarity between two relevant pieces of legislation passed at Westminster. We will now engage on the implications of the ruling. Protecting the rights of all will underpin our actions. So a pretty perfunctory statement there from the First Minister of Scotland. Adam, your reaction?
Well, John Swinney sort of inherited this case, didn't he? He's only been the First Minister for, what, a year or so, if that? My maths on that is a little bit fuzzy, but this case has been going on for several years, I think all the way back to 2018, when the Scottish Government first introduced this, or rather the case against the Scottish Government over public sector boards, and equality on those boards was introduced. So, look, it's a perfunctory statement. I suppose he is, feeling a little bit embarrassed by this and will now have to comply with it. But as I say, it was not his fight that started this. It was long preceding him.
Well, Adam Cherry, thank you very much indeed for being there outside the Supreme Court on such a big day, such an important ruling for quite a few people. Shall we debate this then? Not between us, don't worry. We're going to get some other debaters on, because joining us now is the podcast host of the Trans Lobby, Frida Wallace, who thinks the court ruling is wrong, and the chair of the Women's Policy Centre, Paola Diana, who thinks the court ruling is right. Well, there's the simple. Paola, why is it right?
Well, it's right because everyone knows what a woman is. The Gender Recognition Act 2004 invented this certificate, the gender certificate, and it's a legal fiction. And it doesn't fit for purpose. It created legal problems because it undermined the law. And the Equality Act, in fact, was confusing. We saw a lot of activists and feminists were actually had to go to court to establish that their view that sex is real and matters in law and in life was actually a good thing to say and not some legal fiction. So everyone knows what a woman is. Today is a great day. And I think this is the time for this government to repeal the Gender Recognition Act because the gender certificate has no value in law.
OK, well, shall we let Frida Wallace come back on that, Frida?
Well, thanks for letting me on, because it isn't often that transgender people get a voice in the media like this, and it's only me that's probably mad enough to do it, so hello. Yeah, I think this is an attack on the equality law. I think it's a misogynistic force, because what are we doing here? We're talking about what a woman is. It also affects the definition of men. It affects trans men. Nobody's talking about that. The reason people are asking what is a woman all the time, and they're reducing women's bodies to, you know, biology all the time, and it's a reductive argument. What it does is it removes the humanity from the argument. You only have to watch when somebody brings a bit of light to this argument and maybe questions the motivations of J.K. Rowling or Maya Forstadt, whoever it is, they get piled on so hard on social media that it's almost unbearable. So there is no balance here. The power is with those lobby groups. They're not working on behalf of women. We know that because women's groups don't support them. The Four-Set Society, Sister Space, they don't have anything to say about this. Why? Because they don't have time for this, because they know that institutional and systemic misogyny isn't coming from trans women, it's coming from, you know, this is why shows like Adolescence are so important, because they show where misogyny lives in society. You know, that's why we talk about this stuff. Now, this affects me personally, directly, but you know, in my social life, in my general life, people don't call me a woman. They don't say, look, Frida, you're a woman. They just treat me as a human being. We don't communicate like that.
OK. Frida, we'll just leave it there for now, but we'll bring you back in, of course. Paola, do you want to respond to any of that? There's quite a lot there.
Well, of course, I'm afraid the language he's using is completely wrong because misogyny...
Paola, can we just be respectful, please?
I'm very respectful. I'm very respectful.
I've seen your YouTube channel. It's not very respectful.
I'm afraid I don't use gender language, and no one can force me.
Well, nobody can force you to do anything, but it's politeness in social settings, isn't it?
Let's let Paola continue. We have freedom of speech in this country. Paola.
Yeah, so this is freedom of speech, so he's a man. So I don't care if men use the word misogyny just out of context. So misogyny is a behavior against women, and women are adult human female. So women who are born female. It doesn't matter how much makeup you have. It doesn't matter how much plastic surgery, let me speak.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much plastic surgery. It doesn't matter how your hair looks like. It doesn't matter. So we are very happy for any man to dress as they please. But we don't want men to start invading our spaces. And regarding to the so-called trans men that I have to explain the public to understand what it is, they're women identifying as men. No one is against them, of course, but they don't have the same problem, and because men are not attacked by the rights of these people as much as women are, because we know that women are threatened every day by sexual abuse. And so the Gender Recognition Act, through the gender certificate, was posing a threat to women because was creating a loophole in the law. And any man, any pervert, any killer, any pedophile, any rapist could have just said, oh, I feel I'm a woman today. I want a gender...
Paola, that's not how the law worked, is it? I mean, we saw that there are transgender people who say that they're transgender women who are ending up in male prisons, certainly in England, because that's how the law has been interpreted by the UK government. The Supreme Court today has affirmed that interpretation of the law. That's how the law has been.
There have been transgender women in female prisons. Sorry, Paola.
Exactly, Emily. The law has been interpreted very badly, I'm afraid, Tom. And that's why this court ruling is the phenomenal, and I thank for Women Scotland because they posed this question. This is only a button.
Paola, but I'm just going to interrupt just because we need to bring Frida back in because I just want to get the balance right on this. Frida, come back in. What would you like to say to what Paola said there?
I think we can all fully understand there are certain situations where sex does matter in law. But the problem is she's aligning the word paedophile with me in a conversation, and that is very dangerous. Now, what I would also say is this is incremental. You have to look at what is happening in America at the moment and look at the policies of Trump, because these are the policies of sex matters, and there are no prizes for women at the end of the gender critical movement because it doesn't actually support feminism. It rejects feminism, and you can observe that in the people that support it. Lawrence Fox was very happy about this today. Why is Lawrence Fox happy? Because he's a misogynist. And this is where we're going with this. So if you want to go down this route, this Trumpian route...
Do women like myself or Paola have internal misogyny, Frida? Just because Lawrence Fox celebrates this?
I don't think it's funny, Emily.
I'm sorry, but that's a ridiculous statement that just because someone who you believe to be misogynistic has celebrated something, that therefore it's misogynistic.
Yes, but it's a pattern of misogyny that we see. Look at why does Elon Musk support J.K. Rowling?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Well, because this is the misogyny. I didn't get into this by writing about trans issues. I wrote about the far right. I can't tell you who I work for, because if I do, I will get threats. I will get people emailing me to my employer to try and get me fired. So I can't tell you who I research for, and that is a real serious problem.
Well, we don't want that. Paola, do you want to come back?
Of course. I mean, we need to protect children and women from rapists, from pedophiles, and this is something we have to say over and over again. The Gender Recognition Act poses a threat to women and children and young girls, because any man can go into their spaces pretending they have a certificate, a gender recognition certificate.
Can I just say one thing to that?
Yeah, Frida, come back in just for a second.
I just want to say one thing.
You had a long say earlier. Paola, we're just going to... We'll come back, Paola, I promise. We'll come back to you. You had a long thing saying it was a weighty charge, so let's let Frida speak to it.
All I want you to do between you, when this goes on to social media, if this goes on to X, have a look at the comments under it directed at me. Analyse those comments and extrapolate from that exactly what I'm talking about. And you will have to... this is the media you put out. This is why no trans people will talk to you. This is why the only reason I'm here is because I keep banging on your door.
Well, Frida, that is a good point, because this ruling does say that transgender people will be protected, just not with female sex-based rights. Paola, it is true that a lot of trans people will get a lot of hate online, particularly on social media. How do we protect against that? Does this ruling protect or help, protect transgender people to live as they wish to, whilst protecting female rights?
I mean, this is ridiculous. Sorry. I mean, we are not talking about the hatred and accusation that feminists and women's advocates like myself get on a daily basis if they talk against gender ideology.
It goes both ways, yeah.
Well, we are called Nazis. Welcome. And you know what? Victimhood culture. I just despise it. It's not about me and you. It's about protecting children and women of this country. It's about protecting the ones who are most vulnerable.
You're not protecting anyone.
Can you let
You're not protecting anyone.
Can you let me talk? See how they respect women. They are always banging on being kind with them. Poor us, poor us. What about being kind with women?
No, I'm very strong and I will counter you.
I mean, they should silence you because you can't just shut.
I'm not trying to silence you. I'm telling you where you were wrong. That's as simple as that. It's simple.
Okay, well...
What I'm saying is that the Gender Recognition Act, that is a horrible piece of legislation...
Can I just say one thing?
Let's leave it there. We really appreciate both your inputs, just because we're speaking over each other quite a lot. But Paola, Diana, thank you very much indeed, and Frida Wallace, really appreciate your pretty much instant reaction to this Supreme Court ruling. So there you go, both sides of the debate there, strongly for you on this channel. And I would like to say we do often have transgender people on this channel, so I would just refute that idea that people won't come on. So there you go.
But what do you think? Do get involved at gbnews.com/your say. As always, we're going to hop up to Edinburgh now, where Tony Maguire, our reporter, has been following this story, of course, brought because of a decision of the Scottish Government. Tony, what's the reaction up there north of the border?
Hello, good afternoon. Well, you know, indeed been following this story for well over 2 years now, essentially back since 2018 when the first gender recognition conversations started coming about, and for today was a huge watershed moment for a lot of women who are waiting on this decision one way or the other. Certainly going into that room this morning, nobody knew what they were expecting. Everybody was prepared for both outcomes, but the 5 judges returning a unanimous verdict certainly seemed to fill the room with a lot of tears, a lot of hugs and a lot of emotions, and they very much passed on through the day. People here campaigning on this for many years. Further afield, you know, there's been obviously quite a lot of reaction to this. This is a huge political story with huge political consequences right across the UK. The first thing that we really heard from today was from the UK government, who said that they have always supported the protection of single-sex spaces, and this ruling brings clarity and confidence. Down the road, of course, in Holyrood, we've heard from John Swinney, who has said that, you know, the Scottish Government will reflect on this and act on the results. Scottish Labour said the court ruling should, of course, be respected, and the Tories, of course, called this a victory for women and a victory for common sense. And some of the more immediate reaction includes Nicole, a woman, a campaigner for Sex Matters, who I spoke to just coming out after today's watch party.
Everybody is just so relieved. It's been, you know, this battle has been going on for years, and we're delighted that the Supreme Court has found in favour of 4 women and rejected the arguments of the Scottish Government. There's a huge sense in the room, in the Supreme Court and across the UK. Women are watching this on their live streams of vindication. Their concerns that they were told weren't valid have been, validated. We were right, and now 4 women, we're just so grateful to them for bringing clarity. That, you know, it may have been there before, but it wasn't being implemented. And what needs to happen now is the government need to act. Our elected representatives need to do their job, the job that we're paying them to do, and this needs to be implemented. The result needs.
Now, certainly, obviously, a lot of the conversation has been about being some very headline issues, you know, when we think back to Isla Bryce and Expectra in prisons. But I think we also need to talk about the everyday women who were here fighting this, people who have stood up to sharing changing rooms, and very much a lot of people who haven't quite made the headlines in the big way, been told today, are going to be taking this result and breathing a huge sigh of relief after months and in some cases years of campaigning for this issue.
He's in Edinburgh for us. Thank you very much indeed for that report. Very interesting to hear the reaction there. Some of you getting in touch. Dubbing Needles got in touch, says trans women are not biological women and should not replace biological women's rights. Having said that, I do believe they need to be accepted in society in their own category. Fed Up says, woman is a biological woman. Why is there any debate? Yes, quite a few of you are surprised that this even went to the Supreme Court, really. I didn't quite realise just how long this legal battle had been raging. This was the culmination, of course.
There are a couple of people just sort of, and this is what I worry about this ruling, that in response we don't look at the sort of the plain sort of legal implications of this, but instead people get overexcited and start shouting at trans women, you're a man, you're a man, you're a man, which is happening in some of the comments right now.
What if you believe that, though?
Look,
what if you fundamentally believe that and you get frustrated that you believe there's a denial of reality, you know? I mean, I personally think that you should treat people with dignity and in a sort of mutual agreement, you agree to how you're going to address someone, right? But I feel like people think that they've been living under a delusion. They've been forced to accept that people can self-ID as a woman or a man, so you can just decide. But you're that a some people don't believe that gender identity is different from sex, you know? Surely
you'd feel a bit awkward if sort of there was some trans person just trying to go about their business and someone was running up to them shouting, you're a man, why are you dressed like that?
Well, that's harassment, isn't it?
But
that's harassment.
But I wonder how many people are going to feel emboldened with regard to acting like that.
I think the problem is we've created this problem through the legal framework by saying in law that if you have X certificate, you have X rights and all of this, and basically feeding into the delusion that you can biologically change your sex. And that's what makes people angry, because they say, well, no, you can't. Like, I know that chromosomes are a thing and you can't change your sex. Whereas, you know, in the past, people just accepted that there were people who, you know, dressed or, you know, acted as a woman and whatever that means. And they just let people live their lives.
Yeah,
but because of all this legalisation of everything, you've just created this problem, and people have just been perpetuating delusions, in my opinion. But I don't
think the
like
first
it.
half of
People
what you say
get
there
really
is absolutely
upset.
right. When it's like overly legalised, and I think it's become a bigger problem than it used to be, and it didn't need to be a problem.
But that's because we should have never said trans women are women.
But as soon as a private business now, which they can do under this ruling, says, you know what, we're going to have our toilets separated by gender rather than sex, and if you're a trans woman, you can absolutely use our loos. As soon as someone starts harassing someone in there, what happens then?
Yeah, but Tom, I'm sorry, public loos have to be sex-based. They just have to be. Now, you would hope that most people would just abide by that out of mutual respect, but
that won't be what happens after this.
Well, we've got to move on for now, but we will come back to this. I'm not trying to shut you up, I promise. A record number of illegal immigrants has crossed the English Channel yesterday, just days after the previous one-day record was broken.
Yes, around 700 people made the perilous journey on Tuesday, taking the total number of small boat arrivals this year to nearly 9,000. That's 40% higher than the same time last year.
Oh, that is bad, isn't it? This will undoubtedly come as a bitter blow to the Prime Minister, who promised to reduce the number of small boat arrivals by smashing the gangs.
Well, earlier on, our national reporter Charlie Peters spoke to the Member of Parliament for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, about these figures.
Mike Tapp, a record number of crossings yesterday for the year, nearly 9,000 for the year as well. What's the government doing to get a grip of this crisis?
Look, we've made it clear before the election and since that there's no magic wand to fix this overnight. And what I've been saying to my constituents is that we've got to bear in mind that the legislation we're putting through isn't in yet. So those counter-terror powers that will enable the Border Security Command, the National Crime Agency to take on the smuggling gangs and treat them like terrorists isn't ready yet. It's still going through the democratic process. But once it is, of course, we'll be taking on those smugglers and ensuring that we operate upstream with our international partners to take them on.
You said you'd smash the gang. So far, you're just smashing records. 650 on Saturday, over 700 yesterday. How long do your constituents and the people of Britain need to wait before those powers come in?
It's a fair question, but look, we did inherit open borders from the previous government. We've got to bear in mind 400 crossed in 2018. We've had over 150,000 since then, so there isn't a magic wand. And once those counter-terror powers have been brought into legislation for the Border Security Command and the National Crime Agency, we'll start seeing an impact.
Can you give a time limit on when you think that impact will come in? When will we start seeing days where there aren't 700, there are 0?
Look, I've worked in counter-terror in the past, and what you don't do is start putting time frames on things. But what is really important is about getting to the smuggling gangs before those boats are launched from France, just like we do terrorists. We don't wait for them to act before we do.
I like that from Charlie. You said you'd smash the gangs. All you're doing is smashing records. I mean, he's not wrong, is he?
Well, let's get some more reaction now with the Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. Stephen, the numbers just seem to keep going in one direction.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, you're absolutely right. These numbers are truly horrific. They are going to start leading us into a situation where we had record numbers towards the end of the year, very close to those of 2022. The estimates now are looking at towards the end of the year, because you've rightly identified this is 40% up from last year, that we're over 50 to 55,000 that could come this year. That's not surprising. After all, Europol and our European partners in security has advised us that last year over 250,000 migrants had travelled across the western and eastern Mediterranean routes. That meant that there would be huge numbers coming over to Britain. So the numbers aren't surprising, the numbers coming over aren't surprising, and the way that we're not controlling them isn't surprising. And I don't believe that the MP for Deal really truly understands that the Labour Party's policies will have minimal effect, because there is no deterrence in any of their strategic or political policies.
Yeah. And in the meantime, the taxpayer has to pick up the bill. Stephen, we're going to have to leave it there. Stephen Wolfe, immigration expert. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Bye, Stephen.
Yeah, there's lots more coming up on today's show. You'll never guess how many repeat knife carriers keep getting away without being sent to prison. This is a really shocking report. You'll want to stick with us to find out what happens after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you at 12:33 exactly. The Supreme Court has ruled that woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological woman and biological sex.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
It means a gender recognition certificate does not change a transgender person's legal sex under the Act. Campaigners say the ruling protects single-sex spaces like hospital wards and refuges. The court found the Scottish Government had acted beyond its powers by redefining woman in equality legislation. But ministers insist transgender people are still protected under separate provisions in the law. Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating claims about a Syrian refugee he'd previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed arguments that segregation in prison was making Mr Robinson ill. He was previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. It's now his second legal defeat in a month after a separate challenge over his prison conditions was thrown out. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%. That is lower than expected, driven partly by falling petrol prices. It's the second month in a row that price rises have slowed, but the relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again from July. The Bank of England expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target until the end of 2027. And adverts for Brazilian butt lifts from 6 companies have been banned in the UK for exploiting body insecurities and downplaying serious health risks. The Advertising Standards Agency says the banned posts, all on Facebook or Instagram, use time-limited deals to pressure customers into booking. The pulled ads include one promising a perfect peachy look and another claiming zero infection risk. Experts say the unregulated procedures can lead to blood clots, sepsis or even death. The crackdown follows the death of mum of 5, Alice Webb, after a BBL. You're all up to date now on the top stories just after midday. I'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Now then, let's take a look at those markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The time, 12:36, and the markets as they stand. The pound will buy you $1.3291 and €1.1688. The price of gold is £2,489.97 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,202 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past midday. Now, I've got to say, a lot of you have been getting in touch on the gbnews.com/your say comments section.
They have indeed. What have you spotted?
What have I spotted? I spotted one person.
Oh, yes.
Who said something along the lines...
You're picking them out.
Oh, I really am. I've got to say, most of them are delighted for you, Emily.
Yes, I am getting a lot of love in the inbox, but that's because you chat nonsense, isn't it?
On this one, you are absolutely hands down winning. Although someone
I'm
called
not
Mary,
here to win. I'm just here to speak the truth.
Someone called Mary did say that she very much enjoyed the respectful nature of our debate, which I thought was a great plaudit.
Yes, other people said, I don't know how you don't wallop Tom over the head, but we don't advocate for violence in this room.
No, we certainly don't.
But yeah, do keep your views coming in, because, you know, not everyone feels the same way on this issue. And a lot of you are saying that, you know, while you agree that you cannot change your biological sex and that biological sex needs to be protected in law, that you do want people to be treated with dignity, whether they're trans, whether they're whatever else.
And I think that's the respect point that people are worried about today, on the other side of the argument that. That yes, this reaffirms the law as it always has been. Fine, great. Celebrate if you want, absolutely. But there will be some people who then go further with that.
You're worried that people are going to go in and start grabbing people out of loos and things that they suspect they're a man. But, I mean, Christine's got in touch. She says, doesn't affect you having a man using your changing room. It does affect us women, so you can't understand how disturbing it is. And women competing against men are not a threat. It is always the other way round. And that's how it feels. You know, if men's sports were suddenly being dominated, if there'd been a pool tournament for men, and two trans men had got into the final and had won it, I think people would kick off rightly, because it's just wrong, but it wouldn't happen that way.
But pool probably isn't going to change its rules, right? I mean,
well, they should off the back of this. They probably will, Tom. They probably will change their rules.
For obvious reasons. But pool?
They probably will change the rules. They probably will end up changing the rules because, like with rulings like this, it does seem like the mood is changing. The mood music is changing.
Well, no,
people are changing their minds on this. The debate has been won.
The ruling allows for what I think everyone should have always alighted upon. What I think, if we really boiled down to it, past the rhetoric from the start, different situations require different...
See, this is where we disagree. I just think there is a female category and a male category. But we've been over this, and we're going to move on because there is a very important story. A third of repeat knife carriers get away without being sent to prison. Now, this is despite Section 315 of the Sentencing Act saying carriers should be sentenced to at least 6 months in prison. What's going on?
Well, it comes after Greenwich police posted about a criminal they've caught carrying a knife not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 6 times in the space of a year.
Yes, in 2020, 72% of repeat knife carriers immediately went to prison, but by last year, it was down to 60%. So does that mean next year it's going to be down to 48%, and so on it goes? Is it time for the penalty for repeat knife carriers to be far more punitive? Or indeed, one strike and you're out?
Yeah, well, let's discuss this now with the head of crime and justice at Policy Exchange, David Spencer. David, thanks for coming into the studio. I was shocked when you shared this on social media this week, and the police used a term, repeat knife carrier. How is that even a term that police can use?
Well, I don't think you're alone in being shocked here. I was pretty shocked as well, and I've been working in this area for about 20 years now. And I think most of the public would be surprised at this. We at Policy Exchange have been looking at this for a while, and we published some polling earlier this year, which said that the public want a tougher approach to crime across the board. So the fact that we're seeing someone get caught by the police, who've done a great job here, all credit to the police, 6 times in a year, and this person's still wandering around the streets of Greenwich, I think it's absolutely shocking to you, to me, to the public at large.
And are they going through the justice system and this is what the judge is ruling, or are they not even making it into the justice system? They're just being let off by whoever, sort of, they note it down and then they're off?
I'd be very, very surprised in a case like this 6 times if this person wasn't being put in front of a court. I'd be very shocked if that weren't the case.
Yes.
So in this sort of case, what we're seeing is that the police are catching this person, they're charging them, putting them before the court, and then the court has decided for whatever reason that they're not going to be sent to prison. The interesting thing, you talked about the Sentencing Act, and it's really, really clear, unless exceptional circumstances apply, this person should be getting a prison term. But that's not happening in a vast number of cases, far more than the original legislation would have imagined, and it's getting worse. As you said, 27% got away with it in 2020. By 2024, it's gone up to 37%. So this is a really worrying trend.
It's completely shocking, especially given what you should expect for someone, what politicians say. And actually, this isn't a problem with the police. As you say, in this instance, this was the police spotting someone that they recognised through the window of a car, stopping that car, and then getting that guy out, finding out a machete on him.
They've done all the good work.
The police did wonderful work. And then the court system lets them down. Is it because our prisons are overflowing? Is it because our judiciary is too lenient? I mean, what on earth is the issue?
The thing is, you're right as well. We're not talking about a penknife here or a Swiss Army knife or something like that. We're talking about a machete. It's absolutely enormous, this thing, when you see the picture of it. So I think there is clearly a real problem, and clearly the prison numbers are part of it. We need to build more prisons, and you know, there's a review going on about sentencing at the moment. The government needs to be really clear. We need to build more prisons. We need to be much tougher on people that are carrying knives. You know, if you're caught with carrying a gun, then you get 5 years in prison. There's a really serious question. Why is it not the same for knives when we know that most murders in this country, the weapon used is a knife?
Do you think judges and perhaps juries as well worry about putting someone away, usually a young man, for carrying a knife, because, I don't know, potentially you have mitigating factors. Oh, it was to protect himself. Oh, he grew up without a father and a mum at home. Oh, what, you know, all of these sort of factors taken into account. Does that have anything to do with the softly approach?
I'm sure that's the sort of mitigation that the defence barristers and defence lawyers will come up with. The reality is the judges need to be really clear. These people are a danger to every single person around them, whether it's you, me, our kids, whoever it is. These people are a danger. The only way to keep our streets safe is for these people to be in prison. And as I say, Policy Exchange has done a load of research on this, and that is what the public want.
Could not agree more, David, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners also share the same concerns. David Spencer there from the Policy Exchange, Head of Crime and Justice.
Well, in the last few minutes, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has reacted to the High Court ruling on the definition of women and sex. Let's take a listen.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment. We need more. We need better clarification in legislation. The Equality Act could be improved. When I was Minister for Equalities, I was working on legislation to actually clarify that sex in the Act meant biological sex. And I think this is really a victory for all of those women who've had to go to court to fight for rights that they already had. I can understand why a lot of transgender people want access to single-sex spaces, but sex is biological, and there are accommodations that can be made, unisex, changing rooms, for example, where there's only one person allowed to use them, or toilets, for example, where only one person can go inside. There are accommodations that can be made. But as Sex Matters found, we have indecent exposure and voyeurism as being one of the most common forms of sexual assault. There are all sorts of men who use the accommodations that have been given to transgender people and exploit them. That's what we're really trying to protect.
Well, there we go, Kemi Badenoch. She has been traditionally quite straightforward on this issue, I must say, not equivocated as much as Keir Starmer. But in other news, the British tennis player Harriet Dart has apologised after she was caught on camera telling an umpire that her opponent smelled really bad and that they should wear deodorant. But is it ever OK to tell someone they smell? And if it is, how should you do it? How would you tell your colleague or your friend that they've got a bit of a BO problem?
Well, we'll get to that question after we have...
No, you're all right. You're fresh. You're fresh as a daisy.
Oh, thank goodness. I was very worried that there was a reason you brought that up, Emily. No, OK, so if you want to get away from perhaps smelly friends and family, you might want to travel to some of these European holiday destinations.
Oh, I'm not sure it'll get any better.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading away for the Easter holidays, I'm afraid there's lots of unsettled weather across southern parts of Europe, central Mediterranean, as a result of Storm Hans, bringing in some heavy rain and some strong winds. Largely dry across Madeira and Tenerife, particularly after all the flooding recently. But as we head our way towards Sardinia, northern parts of Italy, parts of Switzerland, some heavy rain here, possibly some thunderstorms and also some strong winds. They're a little drier and brighter across parts of Greece. And it looks brighter for all as we head towards Saturday, but temperatures remaining in the mid-teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards, but that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too. Turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy, outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across Scotland, still with some light outbreaks of rain and still a little bit breezy here at times too, but feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 17 to 18 degrees.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. The latest AI travel news from gbnews.com advises motorists to exercise caution on the A9 1004th Road Bridge, where high winds are affecting road conditions. On the M4 westbound at junction 45 Innisforgan, both the off-slip and on-slip are closed for cyclic maintenance with diversions in place. In Hertfordshire, the M25 anti-clockwise exit slip at junction 22 is experiencing a broken down vehicle with one of two lanes closed. Traffic is expected to normalise between 1 and 1:15 this afternoon. Stay informed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 to 1, and the restaurant chain Toby Carvery has come under fire after chopping down a significant 400-year-old oak tree. It's considered to be more ecologically significant than the Sycamore Gap.
Yeah, so this tree is 6.1 metres wide. There it is, fallen down. It was one of London's oldest and largest, and it supports more native wildlife than any other tree, making it crucial for biodiversity, apparently.
Oh, the woodlice must be so sad. Well, the chain believed that it had a legal right to fell this tree, which was not covered by a tree protection order.
Well, we're joined by Chief Executive of the Tree Council, Sarah Lom. Sarah, thank you very much. I mean, reading about this, there are a lot of very upset people. Oh, lovely background, Sarah. How do you feel about Toby Carvery's decision to just sort of, chop this tree down?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. I mean, I was down on site this morning, and I have to say, first of all, it makes you really, really sad to see this tree with its branches just chopped up lying there, but also really, really angry that it could have happened, that there isn't enough protection around to have stopped this happening. We're incredibly lucky in the UK. We have more ancient trees than the whole of Europe combined. So it's really, really important that we look after them.
Now, of course, the restaurant argues that the tree was dead or dying, and of course that it was on their land, it was their property. So what do you say to their argument that they were within their rights to cut down this tree, and that it would have posed a health and safety risk if they hadn't?
I mean, I'd like to know who assessed the tree to be dead. Normally, you would have an arboricultural report and it would be in depth, in detail. We haven't seen that. Nobody seems to have seen that. So, that could have shown that, in fact, perhaps the tree could have been managed better in some way. It could have had some of the branches lifted, and then the tree would have survived rather than just felling it to the ground. So a lot of questions, I think. Why wasn't the local council informed about it? So that's why we need more legislation to protect these trees going forward.
And just from a compassionate standpoint, it's clear from the reports that a lot of people who lived around the area really cared about this tree. And they'll really miss it. I mean, there are reports of people who used to play around the tree when they were younger, used to run around the woods. This tree was one of the larger ones. This tree surgeon says that you can tell it wasn't dying because there's still foliage growing on it. Now, I don't know about that, but it just seems quite an extreme thing to do, to just go and chop the whole thing down.
Yes, I mean, quite apart from, the fact that this tree gives us a peephole into history. It's been there for so long. Yeah. It does so much. You talked about the ecological value of it. It could be home to more than 2,000 species, and some hundreds of those can only live on an oak tree. And it's capturing carbon. It's giving us shade and cooling the area. But as you say, it lifts the spirits. And trees and green space, I think we all discovered in lockdown the impact, the uplift that it gives us. So,
well, Sarah, Toby, this isn't great PR for Toby Carvery, that's for sure. Sarah Long, thank you very much indeed. You're the Chief Executive of the Tree Council. Some things are more important than a Toby Carvery.
But I would have thought if I had a 400-year-old tree on my land, I'd have thought that was a great asset. I mean, it is bonkers to... I'd like to understand the sort of decision that has been made there.
Well, they obviously just didn't think of it in the same way as the locals do. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Let us know what you think of that. Yes, the British tennis player Harriet Dart has been forced to apologise after she said her opponent smelled really bad and should wear deodorant. Is it ever OK to tell someone they smell? And how on earth should you do it if you just need to tell them but you don't know how?
That to come, but first the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards, but that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too. Turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy, outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across Scotland, still with some light outbreaks of rain and still a little bit breezy here at times too, but feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 17 to 18 degrees.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
If you've read Spare, you'll know that Prince Harry's very open, isn't he, about his drug taking in the past. So it's going to be interesting to see if he was honest in his visa application.
Well, we're absolutely waiting for it. Yes, he admitted he took cannabis, cocaine and magic mushrooms, as we know in Spare, and also the Netflix series. He said that. There's been so much talk about it, and obviously Judge Carl Nichols originally said he refused to release any footage, saying that he basically because of Prince Harry's privacy. But as we know, Trump, border security and application of rule is one of his priorities. And I do see Harry as a pawn, really, for Trump and collateral. So everyone's waiting to see what happens. Tuesday is the day, D-Day. We don't know whether Prince Harry is quaking in his boots. But, he quit being a working royal. Well, did he get preferential treatment? We don't know. There is possible misconduct. Apparently, DHS says that actually releasing the paperwork won't shed any light onto how things work. But there are thoughts as well that he could have entered on a special visa. Now, this is an A1 visa that deals with immigration paperwork. And it's a special kind of visa for heads of states and royal people. So Prince Harry could have got through on that, but we're waiting to hear. It's D-Day tomorrow.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th of April. I'm Emily Carr.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, there you go. Jubilation, a victory for women everywhere as the Supreme Court rules that a woman in UK law means biological sex.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Elsewhere, Sir Keir Starmer is facing a summer of discontent as union leaders lay the groundwork for widespread strikes.
And is Britain losing control of its borders? Has it lost them? GB News provisional figures show around 700 migrants arrived in the UK yesterday, surpassing the previous one-day record of 656 migrant arrivals, and that was on Saturday. How many hotels are we going to need?
And breaking news, Tommy Robinson loses his appeal against an 18-month prison sentence for contempt of court.
And is this a betrayal? The D-Day veterans, war heroes, call out the government for backtracking on their travel pledge for those to attend commemorations in Normandy. They were going to put up the fee. It looks like maybe they've U-turned.
And fat-phobic flyers. A plus-size traveller says she was discriminated against at an airport after a worker refused to push her wheelchair because she was just too heavy.
Oh, what an evil woman, eh? And a woman filmed charging towards a donkey handler in Egypt, punching him several times and chasing him with a whip. She's been arrested. But is this donkey vigilante justice acceptable?
Well, of course, the biggest news today is that donkey vigilante I'm joking, of course, it's the Supreme Court.
Well, in your book, it probably is, Tom. God, you know how to rile me up, don't you? You know how to rile me up.
I do think it is an important ruling, but it does just it does just say what the law was and how the law has already been interpreted.
Yeah, but you know, it's been a long journey to get to this point. At one point, you were a pariah if you dared to say that trans women were women. That's why women like Maya Forstater lost their jobs as a result. It was seen as the most controversial thing in the world to say trans women are women. I remember I censored myself. I feared putting anything out there that would suggest that I didn't believe such things. A lot of women felt the same way. Thank goodness there were women who were willing to put their heads above the parapet so that more women, younger women, could actually get involved in this debate and say, well, hang on, I do believe that sex matters. I don't believe that you can change your biological sex. And I do think that in some areas this is a threat to women. So I think you're forgetting the sort of history of how we got to this point, and it's been a long and winding road. And I believe we're going to be speaking to Rosie Duffield, the Labour MP, who of course has been very outspoken on this, and she's felt very bullied in the past, if I get it right. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but you know, she's been treated a bit on the sidelines.
I think it's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons she left the Labour Party, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, along with other economic issues that she's made very clear as well. And I do think that is to some extent an absolutely correct thing to say, that on all sides the temperature has been far too high on this issue. You've had people saying ghastly things to each other. The abuse that J.K. Rowling has received has been horrendous, but equally the abuse that some transgender people has received has been horrendous as well. I wonder if now that we have rulings like this and reports like the Cass report, we can start taking the heat out of this conversation.
Well, not if people are still happy with, you know, women's spaces being open to biological males. That's the issue, right? But this gives more strength to the argument that actually that's not right.
Well, it defines what the Equality Act means.
Yeah,
but it means that private firms, can decide, if they so choose, to segregate by sex or by gender.
But I think that they
and that's completely
sex or gender. OK, well, let's open that can of what am I saying? Barrel of worms? Can of worms.
Barrel of fish.
Thank you, Jake, who's in my ear. Anyway, gbnews.com/USA. We've got a lot to discuss today, so stick with us. But that's after your headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Plenty more on the barrel of fish later this hour. First, though, let's take a look at the top story this lunchtime. The Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex, not gender identity.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
These gender recognition certificates do not change someone's legal sex for single-sex services like rape crisis centres or hospital wards. Campaigners have hailed it a victory for biology and a watershed for women and same-sex attracted people. But LGBT charity Stonewall says the ruling is incredibly worrying for the transgender community. However, the court today reaffirmed protection from discrimination remains. Well, here's what one woman had to say just after the judgment was handed down at the Supreme Court.
Sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
In other news, Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating claims about a Syrian refugee he'd previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed arguments that segregation in prison was making him ill. Robinson was also previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. It's his second legal defeat now in just a month after a separate challenge over his prison conditions was thrown out. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%, lower than expected, driven by falling petrol prices. It's the second month in a row that price rises have slowed, but the relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again from July. The Bank of England expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target by the end of 2027. Well, Japan is heading to Washington today for high-stakes trade talks, becoming the first country to test Donald Trump's tough tariff stance. The president said he'll personally attend the meeting, which will cover tariffs, defence costs and what he calls trade fairness. Meanwhile, hopes are rising for a UK breakthrough too, with the US Vice President JD Vance saying Britain is in a strong position for a great agreement, thanks to cultural ties and Trump's affection for the UK. Talks are already underway with the government, and officials say they're working very hard alongside the Starmer government. The White House says trade proposals from over 15 countries are under review, with decisions expected very soon. And the number of young adults using disposable vapes has nearly halved in just a year, ahead of a UK-wide ban on single-use devices from the 1st of June. University College London says users are switching to refillable and rechargeable options in response to the upcoming ban. The drop is sharpest among 16 to 24-year-olds, falling from 63% to 35% in just 12 months. The government says the move is aimed at cutting youth vaping and reducing environmental damage. That's the latest news from me for now. Let's head back to Tom and Emily for plenty more on that cupboard of bears.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 8 minutes past 1, we can declare that the Supreme Court has unanimously ruled that the use of the terms women and sex in UK law under the Equality Act 2010 refers to biological sex.
Yes, this, of course, follows a long-running legal battle between the Scottish Government and the campaign group for Women Scotland. Now, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has welcomed the ruling.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
Well, joining us now is the independent Member of Parliament for Canterbury, Rosie Duffield. Now, Rosie, of course, you were elected as a Labour MP originally. Was part of the reason you defected to sit as an independent issues around sex and gender that you just sat so differently from the front bench of the Labour Party on?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly taken its toll being a member of the Labour Party and being briefed against constantly and kind of dismissed publicly for the last sort of 7 years. And that was definitely a part of what made me make my decision.
So how do you feel now? Because it seems as though the Labour Party are, well, I wouldn't say celebrating this ruling, but they're, you know, acknowledging it as fact and almost as if it's always been this way, Rosie, has it?
Yeah, there's an awful lot of sort of backpedaling and, you know, you could call it soft gaslighting, people pretending that they always believe things, just generally since this government have taken into power, you know, changing the way they speak about Donald Trump and changing everything they've ever stood for. And this is probably going to be treated in exactly the same way. People pretending that I wasn't ever hounded out. And in fact, the people that were part of trying to hound me out are now ensconced in number 10 and, you know, in the NEC of the Labour Party. So facts are facts, and I'm not going to start pretending otherwise.
And yet there has been, of course, a move from some figures within this government that almost preempted this ruling, or at least have been commensurate with the law as this ruling have found it to be. So Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, early on, I think it was in the first couple of months that he was Health Secretary, he made a decision on single-sex wards in hospitals in England, and that was based on sex rather than gender. I mean, that fits with this ruling. Is this ruling all that different from what the government has been behaving like?
Well, Wes has always been an ally in this. And, you know, of course, a year ago we had the Cass review and he was fully supportive of the findings of Hilary Cass from day one and has always been respectful of that. He's always listened to me personally and has had deep concerns about the way that some, like Kemi just mentioned, were misinterpreting the law.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of politicians who were sensing the mood music was changing for rather a long time, and it will be nice that people like the Prime Minister and others who have been asked that question, what is a woman, will now be able to answer it with some conviction, presumably, because now the law once again backs them up with being able to say a biological woman.
I look forward to that.
Well, hang on, do you think that actually changes, because this is about the definition of the word woman in the Equality
Act. This allows them, I believe this will allow them to be more, say it with more conviction, Rosie, and not get jumbled up in their thought process.
Yeah, exactly. Things like, I think Keir Starmer said 99% of women don't have a penis. I mean, he's going to have to try and clarify that now, I think.
Oh, God, we're going to go round and round again, aren't we? But, Rosie, just lastly, how do you... Because we've been debating a little bit about how much this will actually impact women, how much this will change things. In your view, how will this change the picture? Because for me, it's just a recognition of what is true, of fact. Yeah. But how will this impact women in their day-to-day life, potentially?
I think, the use of terms like, biological terms for mother and breastfeeding, and when lesbians want to meet together with just other women, that will all have real different, an actual effect. So I know a couple of lesbian groups that can't meet in public without men coming in and sort of opting into their spaces, but hopefully now that will now end.
OK, well, Rosie Duffield, thank you very much indeed. You're the independent MP for Canterbury. I've been speaking about these issues for rather a long time.
Well, we're going to be, of course, keeping an eye on the implications of this ruling throughout the rest of the programme. But in other news, could the UK be about to face a summer of discontent?
Oh, yes, union bosses are reportedly laying the groundwork for widespread strikes in the coming months, which could see NHS staff, teachers and civil servants joining the bin workers on the picket line.
Well, this comes just months after the government was accused of capitulating to trade unions by handing public sector workers pay rises worth over £10 billion, hoping it would pacify the unions and keep them on side.
However, this fresh wave of potential industrial action threatens to cause chaos in schools, hospitals and government. But how have we got to this point? Should we find out with political commentator Tim Scott what he thinks? Tim, I believe that it's not all that surprising that the unions may well be feeling a little emboldened, considering one of the first things the government did when they won the election was to say, train drivers, you can have some extra cash, and junior doctors, you can have some extra cash.
Yeah, Emily, Tom, good to be on, thank you. Yes, I think this was always an issue that was likely to come up and likely to be a problem for Labour. And some of our older viewers and listeners may well remember the winter of discontent that did for the Labour government back in the day and led to the election of Maggie Thatcher. I mean, she was widely credited with taming the unions, but now they're back in play. And I think you're quite right. Your opening piece is quite good. Labour did give inflation-busting pay rises to the unions, worth up to $10 billion. And maybe they were hoping that this would put it to bed. But there's a lot of support there, quite a lot of Labour frontbenchers, Angela Rayner, Louise Haigh, for example, have been trade union reps and shop stewards before. So I think Labour, the unions are now coming knocking, shall we say, for the support that they gave to Labour. They gave Labour a lot of funding. And I think it's now clear that union leaders, at least, are expecting something back from Labour.
And it's interesting to look in the case of Birmingham, where Angela Rayner, Jing McMahon, members of this government have said to the union members, you should accept this deal from the council. It's a generous deal from the council, which, by the way, has no money. And if you're wanting lots more money, that's simply not on the table because they're bankrupt. And yet the union went against what the Labour government said. Are we going to see potentially unions like Unison and Unite kicking against this government despite their historical ties?
I think we may well do, Tom. And you mentioned Unite. Unite and Unison, the two biggest unions, they have about 1.25 million members each. And the unions are particularly strong in the public sector. And Unite is the union behind the Birmingham bin strike. Now, to be fair, after that equality ruling, which I felt was a little controversial, but the bin men are being asked to take a pay cut, to be fair to them. But as you quite rightly say, Tom, the council is bust. And there's now the threat of, and the GMB, there's threats from Union, from Unite, from the GMB union in Peterborough, that this strike could spread. And if people start to see rubbish piled up in the streets, I mean, having your bins emptied, surely that is pretty much the most basic of public services that, you know, that can be imagined. So, yes, I think we could be heading for a summer of discontent, as you say.
How are the government going to deal with this? Because it's quite tricky for them, isn't it? Particularly, you know, Angela Rayner, darling of the trade union movement, has always been, you know, very active in that. Of course, lots of funding comes to the Labour Party from the unions. How do they do this? Because you've got Rachel Reeves who's trying to balance the books desperately. Keir Starmer, the same issues as well.
Yes.
What do they do? What do they do?
I mean, how do Labour deal with it, Emily? I mean, with difficulty, I think, you know. Rachel Reeves and her famous fiscal headroom, which seems to be disappearing as fast as a snowdrift in a heat wave. You know, I think there are going to be demands. You know, the bills are going to come in. Labour received a lot of funding. At the election, they managed to raise more money than the Conservatives. Usually it's the other way around, to be fair. But that was largely due to some big donations from the unions. Also, Labour's employment rights bill, which is going through Parliament, which I fear will result in less employment all round. There are some goodies in there to make it easier to set up a union, to recruit, easier to strike. Which could come back to bite Labour. So I think this.
Right, I think the bill removes what has been the case for years and years and years, that you need a turnout threshold.
Yes.
With regard to getting more than half of the union out to vote for a strike. Getting rid of that turnout threshold, as the bill will do, will mean that strikes become almost comically easy to call.
Yes, you could call a strike on an absolutely minuscule percentage of the members. As you quite rightly say, Tom, they're trying to get rid of that employment threshold. They're also trying to change the political levy that is part of your membership fee to you have to opt out rather than opt in. Now, this, of course, will boost Labour's coffers.
And, Tim, we're also going to be discussing the banter rule as well that could be coming in. Can't have banter in the workplace, absolutely not. But, Tim, we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much indeed for your insight on that one, a political commentator, because in the last few minutes, the author J.K. Rowling has posted her reaction to the Supreme Court ruling, this on the definition of a woman. She says, it took 3 extraordinary, tenacious Scottish women with an army behind them to get the case heard by the Supreme Court, and, in winning, they've protected the rights of women and girls across the UK. At For Women Scotland, that's the group that brought this legal case. I'm so proud to know you. So there you go. That's J.K. Rowling, who, of course, has championed this issue for, well, many a year, been one of the most vocal people. There she goes with the flag and everything.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's show, including a warning for some distressing images now. A woman filmed charging towards a donkey handler in Egypt, punching him several times and chasing him with a whip, has now been arrested. We're about to see the woman chase towards the... Oh, there she is. Well, we'll be able to show you that a little bit later, discussing it after the break. Also...
Yes, the D-Day veteran betrayal. War heroes are calling out the government for backtracking on their travel pledge for those to attend commemorations in Normandy. Yes, they were going to fund their trips for these commemorations, but it looks like they may be U-turning on that one. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:23. And now, earlier today, political activist Tommy Robinson lost a Court of Appeal challenge against the length of his prison sentence for contempt of court.
Well, he had challenged his sentence on compassionate grounds, claiming that being segregated from other prisoners was harming his mental health.
OK, well, let's drill down into this for more. Let's speak to Barrister Dominic Bardil. Dominic, thank you very much indeed. So what's happened here? We covered the appeal, was it last week?
Yeah.
Last week. Now we know that he hasn't been granted it. So what's next for Tommy Robinson?
Well, essentially now, Tommy's going to have to go back and reconsider his entire position. Essentially, as you said, it was compassionate grounds that he was challenging his detention, but it goes back to an original judicial review claim where he was claiming that he was in solitary confinement. The court have essentially said at this stage that he wasn't in solitary confinement. He's not in solitary confinement. He has, for example, access to emails, access to television, extra time outside of his cell, a number of factors that don't apply to other prisoners. So at this stage, it's simply that the court has dismissed all of his arguments. And a key point to bear in mind, of course, is he originally went forward with 7 grounds, essentially. I believe it was 7. That's been reduced to 3. So he abandoned several of those grounds in the process of this appeal before the court.
Now, this is all because, let's not forget, he breached a court order in the first place. A court said that he should take down a documentary that he had produced that a court determined to include libelous information, and he refused to do so. They then said, if you do not do this, we will convict you and you will go to prison. And again, he refused to do so. I suppose, to some extent, are we surprised at all that we've ended up in this position?
No. Well, I would say we're not surprised. Part of the reason, of course, that he was sent into prison in the first place was because of the breach of an injunction. So there were libelous claims, or the court found previously that there were libelous claims made in the documentary. And essentially that forms the backdrop for the contempt of court. But he is not actually, and indeed the judgment goes into a bit more detail, he's not actually in prison as a criminal prisoner. He's in prison as a civil prisoner, which means there are slight differences in the way that he's treated. it means essentially, for example, that he doesn't have to work. He doesn't have to do any work. He voluntarily does work. And of course, in this appeal that's been handed down today, it's acknowledged by the court that he voluntarily worked an hour and a half. So again, he gets twice as much time outside of his cell than the other prisoners. So essentially, what he's claiming to be segregation is segregation, but it's not quite the same thing as solitary confinement, which is where you have no contact with anyone.
So is this similar to, because we were covering Hashim Abedi, who brutally attacked 3 prison officers, is this the same type of segregation as he had? Because he was allowed to sort of roam free around, he was allowed to speak to other Islamists, really. There's lots of reports around how Anjem Chowdhury was in his ear telling him what to do and this and that. Because it seems, we've spoken to barristers in the past who've said, you know, this is quite an extreme sentence for Tommy Robinson. Obviously, he's a hugely controversial character and people have all sorts of views about him. But quite an extreme sentence for contempt of court and for what he'd done. And then also the segregation element as well.
So if I take what you said about the extremity of the sentence first, because it's mentioned in today's judgment. In fact, the court go even further than not criticising the sentencing judge. They actually praise the sentencing judge and say that his approach was meticulous. And that's because this is all brought on the back of information that is now available, an ADHD diagnosis, for example, for Tommy Robinson, that was not available to the sentencing judge at the time. So what he's saying is had the sentencing judge known at the time that I had all of these additional issues, he may well have reduced my sentence, and so it should be reduced now. Actually, what the decision today is saying is, whilst ADHD wasn't known at the time, there was a report that touched on complex PTSD, and that was taken into account, and there was a reduction applied. So this extreme sentence, and I would agree, it certainly on the face of it looks like a very hefty sentence, but this extreme sentence actually comes already with a reduction. One of the reasons why it may be extreme is because the sentencing judge at sentence said that each individual breach of the injunction is enough to cross the custody threshold on its own. So even if he had just done one of these breaches, that would have been enough to send him into custody. Now, of course, there's a debate you can have about whether that's right or wrong and whether we agree with that or whether it should happen. But what this appeal is not a rehearing of that sentencing exercise, but rather a review of it. So it's the judges looking at it and saying, did the judge do the right thing? One interesting point, if I may, is Tommy Robinson was actually out of time in some of his points that he brought for appeal, but the court admitted the evidence anyway in his favour to some extent, for example, the new reports, so that they could consider the new information. And that's a sign, of course, that in this instance, the court have at least listened to what Tommy Robinson is saying. But their final conclusion was, nonetheless, regardless of what we think of it, their final conclusion was that this new information does not amount to sufficient grounds for granting the appeal.
OK, well, thank you for explaining that to us all so clearly. Dominic Bardale, barrister, thank you very much indeed. I mean, I think it's just tricky, isn't it, when people see, you know, for example, the knife crime carriers, they're not banged up, but then they see Tommy Robinson, a political activist, backed up for contempt of court, you know.
But it
seems extreme.
It does show how significant contempt of court is in our system. I mean, of anything that you can do, if a court tells you specifically do not do that thing, it's really good advice to not do that thing.
You can punch your constituent in the face and get away with no prison time.
Absolutely, but if a court had said to Mike Amesbury specifically, we're handing you a court order to not punch a constituent, and then he punched a constituent, he'd be in prison.
Is it just that? This is Good Afternoon
Britain. It's a court order.
Is it just that? This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. We're going to be discussing that later on in the show, but after the break, D-Day veteran betrayal. War heroes call out the government for backtracking on their travel pledge for those to attend commemorations in Normandy. Is this a betrayal of our D-Day veterans? We'll discuss that next.
Well, later in the show, also fat-phobic flyers. A plus-size traveller says that she was discriminated against at an airport after a worker refused to push her wheelchair because she was just too heavy.
Dear.
Well, all of that to come after your very latest headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. 31 minutes past 1. The top story. The Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex, not gender identity.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Well, it means that gender recognition certificates don't change someone's legal sex for single-sex services like rape crisis centres or hospital wards. Campaigners have today hailed it a victory for biology and a watershed for women and same-sex attracted people. But LGBT charity Stonewall says the ruling is incredibly worrying for the transgender community. However, the court reaffirmed that protection from discrimination remains. Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating false claims about a Syrian refugee he'd previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed arguments that segregation in prison was making him ill. Robinson has also been previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%. That is lower than expected, driven mostly by falling petrol prices. It's the second month in a row that price rises have slowed, but the relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again from July. The Bank of England expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target until the end of 2027. And Japan is heading to Washington for high-stakes trade talks today, becoming the first country to test Donald Trump's tough tariff stance. The president says he will personally attend that meeting, which will cover tariffs, defence costs and what he calls trade fairness. Meanwhile, hopes are rising for a UK breakthrough too. US Vice President J.D. Vance says Britain's in a strong position for a great agreement thanks to cultural ties and Trump's affection for the UK. Talks are already underway, with officials working very hard, they say, alongside Keir Starmer's government. And the White House says trade proposals from over 15 countries are under review, with decisions expected very soon. And we'll just bring you one breaking line before I hand you back to Tom and Emily. And we, of course, take a look at the markets this hour. We're hearing that the 49-year sentence of triple killer Nicholas Prosper, who's 19 years old and murdered his family and was also planning a school shooting in the city of Luton, has been referred to the Court of Appeal this afternoon under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. That is according to the Attorney General's office. So we'll keep across any developments on that as it comes to us throughout the rest of this afternoon. But as I say, that 49-year sentence for Nicholas Prosper, 19 years old, has been referred to the Court of Appeal. Well, that's it from me. Let's take a look next at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's the lunchtime markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3291 and €1.1688. The price of gold, £2,489 and 97 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,202 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. The latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A92 Tay Road Bridge is closed to double-deck vehicles with a speed restriction of 30 miles per hour due to high winds impacting driving conditions. The M4 westbound at junction 45, Ynysforgan has both the off-slip and on-slip shut due to cyclic maintenance, with diversions in place. On the A303 eastbound between the A36 and the A360, congestion is causing delays of 15 minutes, but traffic is expected to clear soon. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm a bit irritated today. So there's two secret files that have been released, one on Prince Harry and his visa claim and getting citizenship in the USA. And what do we learn from it? Nothing. Nothing, because it's all redacted. And then the biggest one of all, history. So Donald Trump says, yes, we can see the JFK files. We have nothing to hide there, whatever. It's all redacted. There's nothing. We don't learn anything new from this. Now, you've studied, you've been like me, you've been fascinated like this since you were a kid.
Yeah, I have. I don't... I mean, let's be honest, is there likely to be files somewhere that's actually saying Grassy Knoll and Magic Bullet...
Giving you the truth.
And that it was the mafia and that it was to do with J. Edgar Hoover or anything else? I don't believe all that stuff anyway. I honestly don't.
Well, how do you explain that it wasn't JFK's brain that was in the post-mortem? It was a different brain. His brain was substituted.
You know what? That's the first I've heard of that.
Well, you see, I thought
it was a different brain. How did they know? How did they know it wasn't his brain?
Well, they may have known what his brain was like
the doctor in Dallas who was there to do the post-mortem because it was his area.
Yes.
Wasn't allowed to do the post-mortem.
That's right, because they wanted to fly him back to Washington, right?
CIA or the FBI, whatever, took the body away.
Right.
And they had time to do whatever they wanted, and doctor anything the way they wanted. But, I mean, and there definitely were two shooters. There were two shooters involved in this.
I don't believe that.
Because of the magic bullet?
No, the puff of smoke from the grassy knoll.
Maybe I'm being extremely naive that time, but for everything that I've seen, everything I've read, I think that Lee Harvey Oswald, how about this, actually did it.
What?
And did it alone.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, the government has been seemingly forced into a major U-turn on the issue of funding to allow Second World War veterans access to attend the E-Day celebrations in Normandy next month.
Yes, ministers had previously ruled out giving the veterans cash to travel to the commemorations, saying funding is for UK government events and not provided for overseas events.
However, after severe backlash, Veterans Minister Al Cairns said, for avoidance of doubt, our government will ensure the support is there for Second World War veterans to attend VE Day and D-Day commemorations overseas this year.
And then it's got even more confusing as it appears that Number 10 has backtracked yet again on this issue. So are our veterans going to be supported in their trip to Normandy? There aren't very many of them left at all. A lot of them over the age of 100. Should we go to Cardiff now and speak to Falklands War veteran Simon Weston? Simon, this seems awful PR from the government, really. I mean, do you understand where we stand now? Will these veterans be able to make what they're calling a pilgrimage for D-Day to Normandy? And will they be backed by the government?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. You know as much as I do on this. I hope so. I hope that they are willing to back up what they said last year. The problem is politicians, we only ever see them when there's a good photo opportunity or good PR. You know, November the 11th is a great PR moment for all of them. You know, if they don't really support in the way that they should. These veterans, they shouldn't even be coming into question. As you pointed out, Emily, there are only a few left. If we're to believe everything we read about Mr. Lammy, he spent more on expenses in the first 3 months of coming into office, on having a good time, more than it would cost to send all of these veterans and their support workers with them to go and do for one last time a commemoration. These people went on those beaches with all of their friends and their colleagues. A lot of those people never got off those beaches, so their memories are well entrenched there. So I think for the government to backtrack, make uncertainty and to cause all this irritation for so many people, it's silly. I mean, who made the decision? Nobody will put their hand up to who made the decision. Was it a civil servant, who we never elect, they just imposed? Or was it a politician? At the end of the day, support the veterans for what they've done and show them the respect they deserve. They have done their best. They gave their utmost in a time when we needed them. They're not asking for anything exorbitant. They're not asking for anything that they don't deserve. They have given now let's give them something back. If the government aren't going to do it, I'm sure there are plenty of private individuals who can afford to, because I've seen people pay more than £30,000 for a rugby shirt at a dinner. So if there are people who can afford to do that, could they not afford to spend £30,000, £40,000 to send all of these veterans over to France to go to the battlefields and just pay one last homage?
Simon, I think you speak for the country there. I mean, honestly, it does seem like it's the least we can do for people who gave, who are willing to give the ultimate sacrifice. But as a veteran yourself, can you just explain to us how important, significant and meaningful it is to return to the place where you were under fire, where your compatriots fell? How meaningful and profound is it to return to the battlefields that you fought on?
I can speak from myself, and I can speak from a lot of my friends and colleagues who were in the Falklands, who've been back, and as a group just recently come back. It is so unbelievably powerful. The amount of cathartic relief it gives you, the amount of emotional release it allows you to be able to go and say goodbye. Some people for the first time, some people have made several pilgrimage events. The fact is that they're only human beings with the same emotions that everybody else has. But, you know, these are deep, deep emotions, because these are guys that you slept in the same tent as, you slept in the same bedroom as for years. And then all of a sudden they're gone in the most violent way. And it's just so very important that their memories are honoured in a way that is respectful. People are not asking for much. You know, we ask people to wear the poppy with pride in remembrance for that sacrifice and suffering for freedom. You know, albeit at times you wonder whether we have any. Yeah. But at the end of the day, these people sacrifice everything. We gave the best we had to offer. We don't ask for a great deal. We don't come out complaining about everything. We don't get treated that well, in truth. But at the end of the day, what we're asking for is respect. We've earned it.
Well, Simon, I hope that, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners hope that some of these decision makers, whoever they are listening to what you just said. Very passionate defence of this. Simon Weston, Falklands War veteran. Oh dear, oh dear. I mean, just reading here, you know, Peter Kent, who served on HMS Adventure, helping troops and supplies reach the beaches of northern France, celebrates his 100th birthday this week. You know, he watched his friends fall beside him, fighting for freedom. We gave everything to be told the government would help us honour them this year, only to have that promise torn away. Feels like a betrayal. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So we've got to find out exactly where we stand on this, where the veterans stand. There are so few left.
Yeah, no, it's actually quite profound, given how little time they might actually have.
It is your question there. Brought a tear to my eye on what Simon had to say.
But maybe you want to travel to see some of those battlefields. I know I've walked the battlefields of the First World War. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. Before you do so, you might want to check on the weather forecast. Here it is.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading away for the Easter holidays, I'm afraid there's lots of unsettled weather across southern parts of Europe, central Mediterranean, as a result of Storm Hans, bringing in some heavy rain and some strong winds. Largely dry across Madeira and Tenerife, particularly after all the flooding recently. But as we head our way towards Sardinia, northern parts of Italy, parts of Switzerland, some heavy rain here, possibly some thunderstorms and also some strong winds. They're a little drier and brighter across parts of Greece. And it looks brighter for all as we head towards Saturday, but temperatures remaining in the mid-teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north, where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards. But that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too. Turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across Scotland, still with some light outbreaks of rain and still a little bit breezy here at times too, but feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 17 to 18 degrees.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 48 minutes past 1, and this is a strange story for you. A plus-sized traveller, that's a fat traveller, staged a protest at an airport after she was denied wheelchair assistance.
OK, but it's a bit more complicated. Yes, the 6XL woman, so that's XL times 6, accused an airport worker of refusing to push her in a wheelchair because she was too heavy. What's she supposed to do? Work out a bit first?
Well, she must have built up a bit of an appetite. Let's speak to the former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller. Steve, this is a story of entitlement more than anything else.
Oh, it's an eye-roll moment, isn't it? It's ridiculous. I mean, from what I know, this lady is not disabled. So quite rightly, the employee at the airport was right to say, actually, you can walk. And actually, he's been very kind to tell her to walk because that's what she obviously needs to do more
So
of.
hang on, Steve. So she can walk, it's just tiring for her because of her weight?
Well, what you do when it's tiring is, as many people know that have common sense, is you stop. And you take a few puffs and then you carry on again. Yes, it's time that she got off her rotund rear and started to melt a bit of lard, to be frank with you, because otherwise she will potentially definitely become disabled. I think, you know, reading this article, it's another moaner, it's another whiner, and actually it's quite an insult to people with genuine disabilities. She needs to stop moaning and start doing.
I think this is a big cultural question at some point, isn't it? The idea is the simple fact of being overweight a disability or not? Because clearly it does impair people's ability to move or whatever. But if it's not caused by an exogenous force, it's I mean, can it be described as a disability?
No, I think if we go down that route, Tom, we're really going down, you know, doom and gloom alley. There is always something you can do if you're too fat. Yes, I know it's challenging. I struggle with my own weights. I can go up and down all the time, but there's always something that can be done. And people need to take ownership of that, really need to take ownership. And let's face it, you know, this particular individual now has got loads of resources to help her to go from fat to slim. We now talk about the fat jabs, for example. I'm not particularly a fan of them, but why isn't she trying that? I think it's also maybe a cry for attention. Look at me, I'm a whopper, and I'm going to get some attention by having this banner in front of me.
Well, Steve, she is a TikToker, and apparently she's got well over 100,000 followers. So I imagine, now sadly this is a trend that we see, people eating and eating and eating because their followers like watching it. I don't know if that's some kind of perversion or we just like watching people. Sorry, very quickly.
Very, very quickly. What you've just described there is arguably an eating disorder. Social media companies ban you if you are promoting any form of eating disorder. Why are they not banning fat people who are stuffing it in at 100 miles an hour? Because that, in my view, is dangerous. And
that's true. If you're dangerously anorexic, you are banned if you do anorexia content, but not if you do overeating content. That is a very, very good point. Steve Miller, thanks indeed for joining us.
You're welcome, guys.
Former presenter of Fat Families and himself a TikTok star.
Yes, well, small warning, as some people might find these images distressing because a woman filmed charging towards a donkey handler in Egypt, punched him several times and chased him with a whip. Well, she's been arrested. You can see the woman charging over, I believe, there she is, attacking the man and chasing him off because the donkey was presumably being harmed, or so she thought. But is this donkey vigilante justice acceptable, Tom? What do you think?
It's never OK to hit someone. It's never OK to hit someone even if you think they are doing something wrong.
Yeah,
is my starting
altercation.
Point. I think they were both in the wrong. And my response might have been to film it, call the authorities, get him dealt with in a way
that is... Might not be possible in Egypt, though.
It might not be.
I mean, it looks like quite a run-down area, doesn't it?
But my goodness me, if you're going to run at that man with the whip, who is going to come off well from that?
She obviously just saw red and just went for it, this Dutch woman. I wonder if she has worked with donkeys, just very passionate about animal rights, whether he was goading her, maybe. I mean, it seems an extreme response. I would probably shudder but walk past the situation.
It's sad.
Which perhaps is the wrong thing to do. Perhaps you should get involved. Obviously, not beat the man, but perhaps you should question.
But here's the difficulty.
Or is it a different culture?
If it was a man who was beating another human being, would there be a moral impetus to get involved and stop that?
Someone was beating you up, I'd step in, Tom.
I'd be.
Don't beat up my.
I would be eminently
friend.
Grateful. No, I think that, but there is a sliding scale there, isn't there? Sort of, I mean, down from the animals that we might care less about up to the humans we care most about.
We saw what happened to that woman who was beating her horse. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Let us know what you make of that. Do you think you should just go up to someone and wallop them if they're beating up a donkey? Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. Don't go anywhere. It's the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards, but that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too. Turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across Scotland, still with some light outbreaks of rain and still a little bit breezy here at times too, but feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 17 to 18 degrees.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver. It's a victory for women everywhere as the Supreme Court rules that a woman in the United Kingdom, according to law, means biological sex.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Keir Starmer's nascent trade deal with the United States could be at risk as Labour closes in on a new EU partnership, giving the EU control over our food regulations.
And is Britain losing control of its borders? And it's a bit of a redundant question at this point, isn't it? GB News provisional figures show around 700 migrants arrived in UK waters just yesterday, surpassing the previous one-day record of 656 arrivals on Saturday.
Elsewhere, peers are preparing an attempt to block Angela Rayner's so-called pub banter crackdown over fears that it will, of course, hinder free speech.
And yes, this one, it's a tough one. British tennis player Harriet Dart, she's apologised after being caught on camera telling an umpire that her opponent smells really bad and should wear deodorant. Is it ever okay to tell someone that they stink? Is it ever okay to tell someone that they stink? A little bit of air freshener just to sort of... Don't want to cause any alarms to go off.
Yeah.
Be careful with that.
Well, I've stayed studiously quiet until this point, so I don't think I would ever suggest that anyone that I worked with has ever so much
his way of saying that I smell?
Not at all.
I'll have you know that I put deodorant on in the morning, sometimes even twice a day, and also I shower.
Yeah, no, showering does help. I do that.
I shower and a little bit of perfume as well.
Yeah, sometimes I wear aftershave, and yet this morning when we were having this conversation in the morning meeting, you're like, Tom, you never smell of anything.
It's true.
Really?
I've never smelt you at all. I mean, I took a sniff of your armpit earlier, and I mean, I won't do it again because I was probably infringing on your personal space a little bit.
Before that sounds like anything, it was live on television.
It was live on television, yeah. not in the back room. But yeah, you just don't smell.
No, it's strange. I don't know why particularly. I mean, deodorant, showering, the occasional. I'm surprised. I pay quite a lot for my aftershave. Maybe
oh,
it's
sorry, maybe it's just
redundant.
my nose. Blame it on my nose.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Blame it on my nose.
To be honest, I can't remember if I'm wearing it today or not. Sometimes I do.
Well, I
sometimes
think
I don't.
I have been faced with this situation once or twice.
Oh yeah.
And it's how I dealt with it was I said with a group of people there, so I didn't pick out the one person. This was in a workplace. I said, "Oh, we need to get some deodorant on in this place."
Oh.
Starting to whiff a bit in here, so therefore everyone had to sort of go.
So then it becomes a collective action problem.
It's a collective action problem.
Yeah.
You
don't
pick
narrow
on one person.
So this tennis player. Did it in perhaps the least diplomatic way that is possible to do it,
well,
singling out an individual.
Her opponent probably stank, right? You know.
Or was this just a brilliant psychological play? It was psyops, just to get inside the head of her opponent. We need to find out, did she win that tennis match?
Yeah, imagine if she was like, what? I smell fine. What's going on? And then just completely collapses.
And then she's off her game. I mean, it's genius. I mean, if that was the psyops that the British tennis team is doing, we need to tell all of our various sporting legends to just ask their opponent why they stink.
So there you go. And the tip is to make it a collective action problem.
If you want to be polite.
If you want to be polite. If you don't, just go for it.
Wow.
GBNews.com. You might not make any friends, but it might resolve the issue for you.
Well, GBNews.com/your say is the way to get involved in that discussion, and indeed all the others. There is some slightly more serious news to come as well, all after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you at 4 minutes past 2. The top story of the day, the Supreme Court has ruled that the term woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex, not gender identity.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
It means that gender recognition certificates do not change someone's legal sex for single-sex services like rape crisis centres or hospital wards. Campaigners have hailed it a victory for biology and a watershed for women and same-sex attracted people. However, LGBT charity Stonewall says the ruling is incredibly worrying for the transgender community. But the court did reaffirm today that protection from discrimination for trans people remains. Well, one woman said the judgment is almost unbelievable and finally reflects what they've always argued.
Sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating false claims about a Syrian refugee he'd previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed arguments that segregation in prison was making him ill. Robinson was also previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. It's now his second legal defeat in a month after a separate challenge over his prison conditions was thrown out. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%. That's lower than expected, driven by falling petrol prices. It's the second month in a row that price rises have slowed, but the relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again from July. The Bank of England expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target until the end of 2027. Japan is heading to Washington today for high-stakes trade talks, becoming the first country to test Donald Trump's tough tariff stance. The president says he'll personally attend the meeting, which will cover tariffs, defence costs and what he calls trade fairness. Well, it comes as hopes are rising for a UK breakthrough too, with US Vice President JD Vance saying that Britain is in a strong position for a great agreement. Talks are already underway, with officials saying they're working very hard alongside Sir Keir Starmer's government. The White House said trade proposals from over 15 countries are now under review, with decisions expected very soon. And the number of young adults using disposable vapes has nearly halved in a year, ahead of a UK-wide ban on single-use devices from the 1st of June. University College London says users are switching to refillable and rechargeable options in response to the upcoming ban. The drop is sharpest among 16 to 24-year-olds, falling from 63% to 35% in just 12 months. The government says the move is aimed at cutting youth vaping and reducing environmental damage. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for one more look at the headlines from me this afternoon in around half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 8 minutes past 2, the Supreme Court has unanimously ruled that the use of the terms women and sex in UK law under the Equality Act 2010 refers to biological sex.
Yes, now this follows a long and quite drawn-out legal battle between the Scottish Government and the campaign group for Women Scotland. Now, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has welcomed the ruling.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
OK, well, we're joined by Conservative peer Baroness Anne Jenkin. Thank you very much indeed. So what do you make of the reaction to some of this? Because there's been quite overwhelming support for this ruling, but some charity groups, for example Amnesty, have said that this ruling is disappointing. It has potentially concerning consequences for trans people, and also Stonewall as well has come out and said they're very worried about this. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm on the side of the women, of biological women, who've been campaigning for a long time to get this result. And I would like to thank you on GB News for covering this so extensively. If you were a reader of The Guardian or a watcher of the BBC, you would hardly have known that this issue was in contention over the last few months and years. So thank you to you, and thank you to the judiciary who've, I mean, it sounds completely bonkers that we've wasted so much time and money for them to have to come to this, what seems like a very obvious conclusion. When it comes to the campaign groups you mentioned, I mean, trans people are going to still be protected in law as all the other protected characteristics under the Equality Act. It's just clarified for those who have been misinterpreting the law that women's single-sex spaces are now protected, and women, you know, as most people understand it to be and would appear to be common sense, are indeed biologically women are now all that situation is clarified.
Given that this is, as you say, a clarification of what most people interpreted the Equality Act to say anyway, Will all that much actually change? Because, of course, we have seen the government talk about, for example, single-sex wards in hospitals. We've seen some sports change their attitude as well. But ultimately, it's not necessarily that the Supreme Court is saying one way or the other. Sort of private enterprise can choose.
I think the problem's really been that we have two different bits of legislation, as I'm sure you're aware, Tom, that the Gender Recognition Act, which was passed in 2004, created this muddle that they enabled men to have gender recognition certificates, which meant that they could change their birth certificate. And then the campaign groups, therefore, were able to muddy the water. And if you're, a Saturday girl in Marks and Spencer and a bloke turns up and wants to try on bras in the women's changing rooms, they just don't know enough about it, and they were confused and didn't feel that they could reject that. And it's been the same, as you say, in hospital wards. But common sense has now come through. I mean, we've wasted a lot of money, a lot of time, and I'm extremely grateful, as a lot of people will be, to the women that you're watching on your screens now, to the campaign groups who've put themselves through hell to do this. It's been a long, difficult journey. They've had to raise all the money for it, and but they have kept strong. And these three women in Scotland, these three amazing women, deserve enormous thanks from all the rest of us for exposing the incoherence in the Scottish Government's position and the SNP's position. But it has been clarified, and I think that most people will be extremely relieved to hear it.
And to you as well. Now, Tom, of course, is right that there has been a sort of change in the way of thinking that around some single-sex spaces and around, making sure that women's rights are protected in what politicians are saying and how these things are implemented. But it doesn't take that long to sort of remember where we were only a couple of years ago and a few years ago. This was a very hard battle. At one point, you were a pariah. People were losing their jobs over this issue because they were called transphobic just for stating that they didn't believe gender and sex were the same thing, or just for stating that a trans woman is a woman. And that sort of... Oh, sorry, Baroness Anne. But yes, it does... We've come a long way with this. Do you think this will put the issue to bed a little, or do you think we're going to see these battles run over and over?
Well, I'm sure there will be much more legal discussion going on, and the lawyers in Parliament and elsewhere will be debating the ins and outs of it. We have got to sort out, I mean, there may be some legal clarification now in Parliament of the Equality Act. I mean, the Conservative Party did intend to put that, if we won the election, to sort out what... Indeed, the judges have now said in the Equality Act, if we had won it, to define women as biological women. But yes, no, I mean, it's interesting that the days of #no debate and for the women, #be kind are well and truly over. But it has taken a few very brave women who've been prepared to put their heads above the parapet. And I think you've had most of them on talking to you today, but they have been cancelled, but at the same time, they've been heroes to the many women who have felt unable to speak out for themselves, but they've watched these women do so for us. And as I say, particularly the four women in Scotland and J.K. Rowling and all the rest of them.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Still trying to get J.K. Rowling on the channel, but perhaps one day. Baroness Anne Jenkin, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time this afternoon, Conservative peer there.
Now, another big story today is the government about to betray Brexit freedoms. Well, that's the accusation of leading Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg amid reports that ministers are planning to realign the UK with EU regulations in exchange for a deal on defence and security.
Yes, and this comes ahead of the first joint UK-EU summit due to be held in London next month. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says he's looking to reset Britain's relationship with the European bloc 8 years after Brexit. So could these deals with the European Union actually prevent us from getting a decent trade deal with the United States?
Well, let's discuss this further with the former Conservative MP Steve Baker, of course, former chairman of the European Research Group of Conservative MPs. Steve, this is a pretty profound moment, given that Keir Starmer fought the election, saying that, Brexit has been done, we're not going to revisit that. And now it looks like he might sign up to not just EU rules as they stand today, but whatever the EU decides in the future when it comes to regulating our food.
Yes, Tom, this is a profound turning point for the United Kingdom, as it is for the world with what President Trump is doing. And it may be that Keir Starmer has really misread what Trump is doing. He's not doing something mindless, as The Economist suggested. What he's trying to do is deal with non-tariff barriers to trade. So that is exactly the kind of thing that Keir Starmer is looking at aligning on, things like regulations on food. American food is safe to eat. I'm absolutely clear about that, not least because when I was a Brexit minister, I asked the Food Standards Authority to come in and I asked them the questions about chicken and beef, and they confirmed that American chicken and beef is safe to eat. But the problem the USA has is that both at home and abroad, from the USA perspective, far, far too many regulations prevent American firms from gaining access to other markets. And that's what Trump is really doing. Now, it's brutal, it's high risk, it's real power politics, it's highly undesirable. But the fundamental problem is you don't get what you want in politics by asking nicely and arguing from high principles. So, of course, instead, Trump has gone the other way with high tariffs. But if Keir Starmer plays this right, he could usher in a really profoundly important change for the UK. If we depart from EU rules, which have been holding us back, leading to the same kind of stagnation which the whole of Europe has suffered, and instead regulate differently, welfare enhancing, pro-competitive, and do that FTA with the USA, we could help transform world trade for the better.
Now, Steve, Keir Starmer would probably say, as he's made clear, recently, in recent times, that we can have it all. We can balance our relationship with the European Union and the United States of America, that there's not necessarily a conflict there. So presumably he'd also say that there has to be an element of compromise on both sides. Both are big trading partners.
Well, I'm certainly willing to compromise. Over the years, I've demonstrated that, even as I've upheld stridently firm principle. But the firm principle at stake here is we must have growth. If this country does not return to growth, we're going to default on pensions, healthcare, social care in the next 10 to 20 years. Those are the implications of the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility's own figures. And therefore, we just must go for growth. We can't afford to be stagnant. Where Keir Starmer is wrong is this idea that we can stick to EU rules and yet satisfy the USA. That is fundamentally wrong. The USA is trying to change those rules, and we shouldn't sacrifice our regulatory freedom just to satisfy the EU.
But Steve, it might be that in the immediate case, people simply don't care about whether or not we follow EU rules or not. Keir Starmer wants this SPS agreement regulating our food so that trade between Northern Ireland and Great Britain is much more free and easy, also at the port of Dover. Might it not be a problem for people with your side of the argument that no one's going to get particularly excited about whether or not it's Brussels or London regulating our food?
Well, it's true that these are arcane issues for many people, but what's not arcane is whether this economy is growing and boosting people's living standards. The truth is the UK has now fallen behind Mississippi in terms of what's called GDP per head. That is a proxy for household income. Mississippi is one of the very poorest states in the United States. Memory serves, it's the poorest. And we've fallen behind. We absolutely must get back to growth. This is why people are so unhappy in this country, is because their living standards aren't improving. If we want living standards to improve, we need to go for free trade and competitive market economics at home. And that means departing from the EU. And I'm afraid there's no escaping it.
I really do hope, Steve, that at some point we rediscover growth in this country. I mean, it's been a long time coming. Somewhere in the distance is coming. Steve Baker, thank you very much indeed, former Conservative MP and, of course, a staunch Brexiteer. Now, in other news, yes, 700 migrant arrivals across the Channel in just one day, beating Saturday's record of 656. Shall we see what our political editor has to say about this? Christopher Hope. Christopher, 40% higher than last year. It's not looking good for the government that wants to smash the gangs. As Charlie Peters said earlier, the only thing they're smashing is records.
No, that's right. Hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. That's right. It hasn't really got any better. It's been 40% higher this time compared to last year for a number of weeks now. Some would say that's because the government removed this reason not to come here, the threat of deportation to Rwanda. That was dropped on the fourth day of this government or the third day by Sir Keir Starmer in his press conference after he won that landslide last July. But it's very interesting. What's happening at the lunchtime now here in Westminster is a story story is broken, which indicates maybe a way forward for this government. There are leaked plans that the UK and France are negotiating a one-in, one-out plan to remove illegal arrivals. The way it works is this: people who have a family member in the UK will be brought legally across from France and left in the country, and in return, an undocumented migrant will be taken back to France. So the idea being that if you've got a reason to be here with family members, you can stay here and you're brought over here in a normal carriage, normal vessel, rather than a small boat. But if you are here illegally, they will be received back into France. This is a big step forward. It's a pilot plan being agreed right now between France and the UK. Until this point, France has said it wouldn't negotiate with the UK. Only the European Union can negotiate. That has been changed. There are talks we have had confirmed by the Home Office this hour. These talks are ongoing. The reports in the Financial Times from the French Interior Ministry are interesting. They say there that it's in France's interests to discourage migrants and smuggling networks from attempting to reach the UK from France. It's a pilot scheme, the French say, that anticipates a future European agreement which France strongly supports. This is I've talked at length to Home Office sources this lunchtime. They say that it's no money exchanging yet, no idea of how many might be brought across to France and how many might be sent back to France. No money pledged, not a silver bullet, one said, because numbers are very, very high. As Charlie Peters reported from Dover,
Chris,
700 crossing yesterday.
Sorry, Chris, just to clarify, potentially under this, anyone who has a family member in this country could just rock up to Calais and they'll be ferried across?
Not necessarily. In terms, it would be a one-in, one-out agreement. So, yes, they could rock up in your language to Calais and be brought across, and then one would be taken back from the UK and taken back to France. The Home Office says this on the record: we are intensifying our collaboration with France and other European countries who face the same challenge by exploring fresh and innovative measures to dismantle the business model of the criminal smuggling gang. So it's a one-in, one-out plan. It'd be limited by those who are already here being sent back, but it would be uniting the families of those illegal migrants who are currently split by the Channel. It's an idea, and what I find fascinating about it is it's a UK-France idea, cutting out the European Union, and that makes it very, very different.
But this is going to be, I mean, hugely... I suppose what the ministers really want when it comes to this is that if... It's a guaranteed way of returning illegal migrants back to France if they come across and are ferried across. I suppose they'll hope that this stops the illegal arrivals coming because they will be guaranteed being able to be taken back to France. I mean, the risk is that they'll just keep coming and trying and trying and trying.
It does take them out of hotels, Tom. If you imagine someone in a hotel here costing us 150 quid a day, and then someone from a family member comes across, that person would then go and live with the family in the UK, assuming they have legal right to remain. So
you still don't have a right to just walk into the country. In fact, utterly bizarre, Christopher. Very interesting to hear that that's on the table.
Although it is a number-limited, safe and legal route, and I suppose the criticism from people for all this time has been if you don't come from Afghanistan or Ukraine or one of the other Middle East schemes, then there's no way to apply for asylum in the UK.
Well, it goes back to the original idea David Cameron did actually in 2012, 13, 14, when he was legally ferrying migrants from the camps in Syria and Libya directly to the UK. And then that meant that you couldn't cross the Channel illegally. And it also goes back to this Dublin Agreement before 2016, when those arriving had to stay in the country they arrived in, but Italy and others didn't sign up to it. It is a fascinating idea.
Under the Dublin Agreement, the EU sent us more migrants than we ever sent them. But Chris Hope, thanks indeed for joining us with that extraordinary news.
I can't get over that. I think we've got to come back to that, actually.
I think we will. We will have to speak about that a little bit later.
With hundreds of thousands, millions of people may have a family member here. I'll just welcome you in.
But then for everyone that comes in, one would leave, so it would be net the same.
Yeah, but still.
It's just freezing migration illegal migration where we have it right now.
I'm not sure that really helps, to be honest.
Well, there's so much more to discuss there. Please do stay with us. We're going to be talking about this more after a very, very short break.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
People sometimes think if someone is homeless, they're not trying for work, or I mean, you clearly have been.
Yes,
but just not getting enough to actually be able
That's
to
the thing.
fund what's so
and
expensive.
When you're self-employed, anyone who's self-employed will understand me that it's it's got its moments of being busy and quieter.
And have you experienced that stigma of being homeless and not having anywhere to call home?
Yes, I definitely have. I felt it through losing friends. I've realised who my true people are, I would say. It's crazy how humanity still exists. More recently than not, I put a post out saying I didn't have anywhere to go one of the nights. And I was in the council the next day and I needed to be in Windsor because the council are nearby. And a couple of people reached out that I didn't even know, a couple, and I stayed at theirs. And they even give me a warm meal. So humanity does exist. And but where's my friends in all this,
Yeah.
A few friends have stepped up a little bit more now and realised this is, become a problem. When they've seen me and actually spoke to me properly and realised this is what I'm going through, they've helped me and let me stay on the sofa or, but it's all temporary.
Just briefly, what about charities in all of this? Are they able to help?
Crisis and Shelter, I've just gone around in circles with. I haven't got any direct help so much. Not been able to get through to anyone. I've wrote to them, I've emailed them, I've Instagrammed them. But the only charity that has helped me, and it's a kind of an unusual one, is Dogs Trust.
Oh, right.
Because I walk dogs, I've been in contact with them to help the homeless dogs get rehomed. I was supporting them. And then all of a sudden they've pulled me in and said, look, you should come down to the Newbury Dogs Trust in Berkshire. We can support you. We have this together through homelessness.
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:28. I still can't get my head around this one in, one out system that's being proposed or apparently being considered by the French and by our country that Christopher Hope was just talking about. Extraordinary.
I can see the logic in it. If it makes it unviable to cross by small boat and you have to go by this route where you have to have papers, you're checked, you're not going to end up in a hotel. I mean, you're still going to have the same number of people crossing. What was it, like 36,000, 40,000 people crossing? Right. But you'll know who they are, they'll have their papers, and they won't go in hotels. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's better than where we are now.
It's a total admission of defeat, Tom. Totally. It's like we can't control our borders, so just come in if you've got a family member here, which literally would account for many a person.
Everyone accepts that there's always going to be some sort of refugee route
I've got my uncle, down the road in Enfield. Can I join him? Oh, yeah, well, all right. The French will take back this guy. And also, what's to say that they'll fulfil their promises? They haven't yet.
Well, they won't be able to live in a hotel, and that's one thing.
Yeah, but that's not the only problem, is it?
True.
But yes, peers will attempt to block the so-called Banter ban in other news in Labour's workers' rights overhaul when new laws return to Parliament later this month.
Well, the Times revealed that pubs could ban customers speaking about contentious beliefs, such as transgender or religious topics. That's this programme banned, for fears of falling foul of Angela Rayner's workers' rights reforms.
I mean, this is ridiculous. Well, we're joined by free speech advocate Professor Frank Furedi. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this one. I mean, it's quite extraordinary that Angela Rayner ever thought up a crackpot idea like this, in my opinion. I mean, you can't control what people talk about in a pub or a football ground, can you?
Well, you can try. I think that this is actually very dangerous because banter is really about spontaneous human interaction. where people are, teasing each other, they're winking at each other, they're kind of making friendships, new friendship circles. Banter draws us together as human beings. And it's always something that the powers that be don't like, because basically it creates a private world of our own where we get to decide what the rules are. And given the fact that people in government love making rules for us, they like to micromanage every dimension of our life, I'm not surprised. We already had a situation where the mayor of London has tried to ban Banter amongst firefighters, arguing that this was a really bad thing. And what I think is really sad and tragic is that what they really are trying to do is to contract the space within which you and I can just be ourselves and not have to censor ourselves or regulate the way we behave in line with
Of course, what the government says is this is part of the workers' rights legislation. This is about the bar staff not feeling threatened by too much banter. This is about those people that work at the sports grounds not overhearing a conversation and feeling offended. In your book, does that fall within workers' rights?
I don't think it does. I think it's a very foolish way of trying to create a situation where you got to watch literally every single word that you express. The idea that somehow we have got to censor ourselves all the time because it may offend somebody, the logic of that is we literally no longer communicate in a verbal form. We just tick a box or we kind of go online and push a button. And that's the logic of that. And it seems to me that there is now this new culture developing that when you go to a pub or you go into a bar, there are all these signs that say, our staff is here, they don't want to be abused by you, they don't want to be offended by you. As if you and I, when we go to a bar, our principal aim on a Friday night is to offend a member, somebody sitting behind a bar.
Not always. No, you're absolutely right. It is mad. Sort of the attempt to micromanage us while the government gets the big things wrong is quite extraordinary. Professor Frank Furedi, thank you very much indeed, free speech advocate. I mean, we have a bit of banter, don't we?
I think we certainly do.
Although someone did say that I was a bit mean to you.
Oh. That's just thick skin.
Yeah, thick skin. That's what I said. Thick skin. We've got thick skin on this show.
You have to at GB News. My goodness me. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain, and there's plenty more to come.
Yes, the UK government is in negotiations with France on a scheme to return illegal migrants who have crossed the Channel in small boats, but it's a little bit more than it seems. This is very extraordinary, actually, if this does go ahead. And the British tennis player Harriet Dart, well, she's apologised after being caught on camera telling an umpire that her opponent smells really bad and should wear deodorant. Is it ever okay to tell someone that they stink? That's after your latest news headline.
Very good afternoon to you. 33 minutes past 2. The Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex, not identity.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
It means that gender recognition certificates do not change someone's legal sex for single-sex services like rape crisis centres or hospital wards. Campaigners have hailed it a victory for biology and a watershed for women and same-sex attracted people. However, LGBT charity Stonewall says the ruling is incredibly worrying for the transgender community. But the Supreme Court judges reaffirmed today that protection from discrimination remains. Well, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has welcomed today's ruling.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
And there were celebrations outside the court as that judgment was handed down. Here's what one woman had to say after.
Sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
Tommy Robinson has lost his appeal against an 18-month contempt of court sentence, with judges ruling the punishment was meticulously applied. He was jailed last year after breaching a court order by repeating claims about a Syrian refugee he'd previously libelled. The Court of Appeal dismissed the arguments, though, saying that segregation in prison was making him ill. Robinson was previously ordered to pay £100,000 in damages after making the original allegations. It's his second legal defeat in just a month after a separate challenge over his prison conditions was thrown out. UK inflation has dropped to 2.6%, lower than expected, driven by falling petrol prices. It's the second month in a row that the price rises have slowed, but the relief may be short-lived, with analysts warning inflation could spike again in July. The Bank of England expects it to hit 3.7% this year, and it's now forecast to stay above the 2% target until at least the end of 2027. And just before I hand you back to Tom and Emily, a breaking line that we're hearing. GB News can confirm now that 705 migrants in 12 boats were indeed brought to Dover yesterday. The Home Office also confirming those latest figures. It is the highest daily figure of the year so far, surpassing what was already a significant figure on Friday, the annual record of 656. So now, yesterday alone, 705 migrants and 12 boats making that journey across the Channel. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. That's it from me for this afternoon. Katie Bowen will have a full roundup for you at 3 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Let's check in on those all-important markets this hour. The pound will buy you $1.3291 and €1.1688. The price of gold, £2,489.97 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,202 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. For those travelling in Wales, the M4 westbound at junction 45 Ynys-Forgan is experiencing diversions due to cyclic maintenance, with both the off-slip and on-slip currently closed. Drivers in Newcastle upon Tyne should be aware of a road traffic incident on the A1 southbound between the junctions with the A191 and the A694, causing one-lane closure. Finally, in Northamptonshire, a broken-down vehicle has led to the closure of one lane on the M1 northbound between junction 15 and junction 15A. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You have the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 20 minutes to 3 and some breaking news just in. Home Office official figures confirm that 705 small boat migrants crossed the Channel yesterday.
It's a new one-day record for illegal arrivals this year, and now reports suggest, this is very interesting, that Britain and France are in talks about a migrant returns agreement that could see us send one migrant back to France, only for them to send another one back. But there are terms and conditions.
So let's understand this all now with our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, what exactly is the arrangement here? It's a sort of one-for-one deal. Are we no better off as a result?
It's a one-in, one-out deal, Tom and Emily. Essentially, migrants waiting in France to try and cross illegally, if they have family members and are seen to have family members in the UK, they will then be brought across, allowed to enter, even though they're illegal migrants, not allowed to stay here and come here, I suppose, and be processed like other migrants are, to prove who they are. And then those who are undocumented arrivals, who are here often in hotels, one of those is removed back to France. It's an idea which they want to see copied to other European Union countries, the French officials say. They say that it's in France's interest, this is via Financial Times this lunchtime, to discourage migrant and smuggling networks from attempting to reach the UK from France. It's a pilot scheme, for the French say, that anticipates a future European agreement which France strongly supports. This one-in, one-out deal, the Home Office confirm it is in talks about this. They say on the record we are intensifying our collaboration with France and other European countries who face the same challenges by exploring what they call fresh and innovative measures to dismantle the business model of the criminal smuggling gangs. Now, there's lots of question marks about this. It may be agreed this year, but may not be in force until next year. It won't form part of this big summit between European Union and the UK next month. That's Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, with our PM, Sir Keir Starmer. No money is pledged behind it. They say it's not a silver bullet, Home Office sources, but the idea is that we're getting towards agreeing deals with countries outside of the European Union umbrella. Yeah. And it goes back to before 2016, when there's a Dublin Agreement was meant to see migrants arriving in the countries they arrive in and staying there. That, of course, as Tom said earlier, didn't happen. But we're going back towards returns agreements, which probably are the future of dealing with the numbers coming here, because they are so large. Look at the record today. 705 migrants arriving yesterday, a record for this year, outstripping the 656 who arrived on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, some of our viewers are a little bit sceptical over what's in it for us, really, on this one. Helen's saying we'd end up with swapped illegal migrants with tenuous, distant relatives in the UK, plus others who still come on trains, planes, boats and other illicit means. Looks like a great deal for France, because, yes, France doesn't have to accept any as citizens, yet we'd accept anyone who happens to have a relative. I mean, it could be, you know, an uncle who's been in Enfield for 11 years. I mean, I don't understand how it helps us, really.
Well, again, it's a report at lunchtime. It is being looked at. The detail hasn't yet been hammered out. But what I would say is it could bring down the bill for hotels, because it would mean that you'd remove an undocumented migrant from a hotel, costing us £150 a night, and replace that person in the UK with someone who has family members here. Arguably, that person could then stay with the family members who may be in a private accommodation by that stage. That's one idea. They wouldn't get, I doubt they'd get immediate right to remain. They go through the usual process, but it's just trying to hook up people who want to come across the channel for a family reason rather than an economic one, and remove those who are here purely for economic reasons. It's an opportunity for doing something different. And again, what I think is interesting, and maybe Helen should reflect on this, is it's about the French and the UK doing their own deal on returns, and that does break new ground away from the European Union.
Yeah.
We haven't seen this for about 8 years since the Dublin Accords fell apart post-Brexit.
Yeah, and that has always been a red line up until now with the French. They won't do a bilateral deal, but they could now. It will be fascinating to see if this actually does stop the phenomenon of people throwing away, tearing up their documents and getting in a boat to be undocumented. I mean, if they have to go through a legitimate process, essentially a process in France or in the UK, but taken across in a legitimate scheme, that could really reduce the numbers. Chris Hope, thanks indeed for bringing us that extraordinary news.
Not convinced. Sounds absolutely mad to me.
Well,
I can't see any positives, really, apart from, maybe less hotel rooms, but that's not what worries people the most.
Documents, I mean, a legitimate route rather than coming across in boats.
We need people who are going to contribute to our economy in this country, you know? We don't just need someone because they happen to have a distant relative here. And the French don't have to give citizenship to anyone. It's just, I don't understand it. But anyway, perhaps you do at home, let us know. And in the meantime...
perhaps you want to swap your place in Britain for that of an illegal migrant. Well, if you do, you might want to check out the weather in France and other European destinations. Here it is.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading away for the Easter holidays, I'm afraid there's lots of unsettled weather across southern parts of Europe, central Mediterranean, as a result of Storm Hans, bringing in some heavy rain and some strong winds. Largely dry across Madeira and Tenerife, particularly after all the flooding recently. But as we head our way towards Sardinia, northern parts of Italy, parts of Switzerland, some heavy rain here, possibly some thunderstorms and also some strong winds. They're a little drier and brighter across parts of Greece. And it looks brighter for all as we head towards Saturday, but temperatures remaining in the mid-teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north, where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards. But that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too, turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across Scotland, still with some light outbreaks of rain and still a little bit breezy here at times too, but feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 17 to 18 degrees.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 minutes to 3 o'clock. Now, this is a very interesting one. The British tennis player Harriet Dart has apologised after being caught on camera telling an umpire her opponent smells really bad, her words, and should wear deodorant. Now, listen very carefully to this.
Can you tell her to wear deodorant? It's smelling to wear deodorant. She's smelling really bad.
I can imagine saying something like that if I was in a mood, if I was losing.
Can you
just tell her to wear some deodorant, please? It's just disgusting.
Wow.
Anyway, we want to know, is it ever OK to tell someone they smell? And how should you go about doing it? Because it is tough, isn't it? It is tough. We've all been there.
Delighted to be joined. I hope that wasn't pointed. Delighted to be joined now by etiquette expert Diana Mather. Diana, thanks so much for joining us. Is there a way to tell someone that we know that they smell?
Well, it's really a very, very difficult thing to do, and especially in that context, because she wasn't with her opponent that much, but she must have been smelling pretty strong for Harriet to say something. But as you say, she was actually losing the match. It is a very difficult thing, and there's no need for anyone to have bad body odour today, because we've got, we all shower regularly, we've got all the deodorants we need, but some people don't like to wear them. But there are, safe ones that are not full of horrible chemicals. I think it is really difficult. Unless you have to, you don't say anything. But on the other hand, if it's a good friend who suddenly does start, or somebody you've met and becomes a good friend, then it might say, by the way, I just don't really like to say this, but are you using any deodorant? Because it is very warm today, isn't it? And, perhaps we all ought to wear it, that sort of thing.
Yes, Diana, I always think it's best to blame it on external things rather than the individual. So, for example, I was in an office and it was a very hot day and it did smell. Now, I knew who the culprit was. But I didn't want to single them out. So I just said something general about how, as you say, it's a very hot day. It's getting a bit whiffy in here. Up the hygiene, guys. And that seemed, I can't remember if it worked or not, but at least I got it out of my system.
Absolutely. And to say, gosh, I certainly need my deodorant today. But it is a difficult thing. So I think you've got to be very kind about doing it. But on the other hand, it is up to us to make sure that we don't offend anybody with bad body odour. Because, as I say, it's something that needn't happen in this day and age. It shouldn't happen in this day and age.
OK, so there is a polite way in which we can go about doing it. That is excellent to know. I'll be telling the team out back. But Diana Mather, thanks so much for joining us and talking us through this issue.
And it's not polite to do it on air, is it?
No,
so
certainly not.
We'll keep that conversation for later.
Oh, but it is important to note that if this was a strategy to sort of make her opponent worse or get inside her opponent's head, the strategy failed because she lost the match for love or for.
I think it was just a catty comment.
Yeah.
I think it was just a catty comment that she was a bit miffed. Right. Well, thank you for watching Good Afternoon Britain. Lots has happened. Martin is up next.
Hello, my beautifully scented, fragrant colleagues. On my show today, I'll be joined in the studio by victorious women from the Supreme Court who are saying this is finally a victim for common sense. That's the precise opposite of veterans today reeling at the fact money has been withdrawn sending veterans to Normandy for VE Day 80th. They're furious and they'll be on my show 3 till 6. But first, here's your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a wet day ahead across parts of the north where we do have some Met Office warnings in force for heavy rain, but an improving picture across the south, turning brighter here, and that's as we see this area of low pressure slowly shift its way northwards. But that does mean quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's across Northern Ireland where we do have a warning in force. A good chance we could see some travel disruption here and also some flooding. Eventually we'll see conditions ease away across southern parts of Wales, across the south and southeast too. Turning a little brighter here, but a chance we could see some showers, particularly across the southwest into the afternoon. And where that cloud and rain sticks around across the far north, it is going to be feeling chilly here too. And it's going to be quite blustery under all this cloud and rain as well, particularly as this area of low pressure shifts its way northwards across parts of Scotland. So cloudy, outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, particularly across hilly areas, and rather blustery around coastal areas. And a fairly similar picture across Northern Ireland too, still with the warning in force until later into the evening. Quite a wet end to the day across northern parts of England, parts of Wales, but turning largely clear across parts of the south and southeast. And we remain to see this north-south split in the weather as we head through the overnight period as well. Still plenty of cloud, outbreaks of rain across Scotland, eventually easing away across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, but largely dry and clear across central and southern parts. Turning chilly here though, and with light winds we could see some mist and fog and also some rural frost, and just a slight chance of a few more showers just starting to clip into Devon and Cornwall by the time we reach the morning. Now, Thursday for many is going to be a brighter day. Once again, some sunny spells across central and southern parts, but still a risk of showers bubbling up as we head into the afternoon. Quite a cloudy day in store across